Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairava yoginim maturmana prameyam shula bhuja kritaspadam. Salutations to that goddess who is the self-reflexive ability of awareness to say I am. That goddess who is established in the lotus, mounted atop the trident, who in each and every moment manifests herself as the trinity of the transcendent, the immanent, and that which is both transcendent and immanent at the same time. Salutations to that goddess who is ever inseparable from her consort. May this be an offering to Chit Pratibha, the goddess who is pure consciousness. Naumi devim sharirastham nrityato bhairava kritehe pravirin megha ghanna vyoma vidyulekha vilasinim. Salutations to the ever-playful goddess who is beautiful yet terrible, like a streak of lightning flashing across the monsoon season sky. She who abides in the body of the dancing Shiva. Yathagnir dahika shakti Ramakrishna sthitha hiya sarva vidya swarupam tam saradam pranamamyam. Om jananim saradam devim Ramakrishnam jagadgurum pada padme tayo shritva pranamami muhurmur. I bow again and again to the lotus feet of she who is like heat inseparable from the fire of Ramakrishna, the power by which he is able to do anything at all, that incarnation of all the gods and goddesses, who is every mantra and every vidya, who is Kali, Tara, Ṣoḍaśī, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamastaka, Dhumavati, Magala, Matangi, Kamala, Jaggadhātri, and others. Salutations to that mother of the entire universe, Sarada Devi, the world teacher. May this be an offering at her lotus feet. Sarva Devi Devi Swarupinye Shri Sarada Devye Namaha Shri Jaggadhātri Durgaye Mantra Dishatar Devataye Guru Shaktiye Namaha. Now we'll do a dhyanam, a meditation on Holy Mother. This is a somewhat lesser known dhyanam because of course in the tradition everyone typically chants the meditation mantra for Sri Ramakrishna. That's a bit more popular. Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rajatam Nirvikalpam, we know that one. But you know, interestingly, that dhyana mantra doesn't really describe Sri Ramakrishna, except in the third verse, Vitaritam Avatirnam Jnana Bhakti Prashanti Pranaya Galita Chittam Jiva Dukkha Seshnam. In that verse, we hear something about this avatar concept, that there is an incarnation of the Absolute who comes moved by compassion for the suffering of humanity to teach the highest peace through the teachings on devotion and knowledge and whatnot. So this Vitaritum Avatirnam Jnana Bhakti Prashanti, that idea is there. And then we get this idea of Drita Sahaja Samadhim Chinmayam Komalangam. So his anga, his limbs are komala, soft. Komalangam, soft-limbed, and that he is ever established in Samadhi. Drita Sahaja Samadhim. He is always in Samadhi. So this obviously brings to mind Sri Ramakrishna, who is sitting on his cot, absorbed in Samadhi, whose limbs were so light that if you were to touch his chin, you would lift up his whole body, as indeed did happen when they tried to photograph him. So that's of course a reference to Sri Ramakrishna, but not really. You could see that this Komalangam could refer to the Christ, to the Buddha, like that. So we don't talk about his beard, his clothing, his stance, his asan. We don't say really anything that would indicate Sri Ramakrishna in this dhyana mantra. So in Sri Ramakrishna's meditation mantra, it's super formless. Especially the first verse, Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rajatam Nirvikalpam. It's all like Advaita, non-dual, impersonal Brahman. In the second verse, it's that formless yet personal Brahman who is still beyond all action, beyond the universe, still very subtle, as vast as the sky, like that. And in the third verse, even when we try to use something more concrete, some avataravada, even then it's so general. So in Ramakrishna's dhyana mantra, it's not a very specific dhyana mantra. In Holy Mother's, by contrast, it's profoundly specific. We learn that her hair is falling down to one side, her beautiful hair. We learn that her clothes are white. We hear about her bangles she's wearing. She's ornamented in bangles. She's got these steady eyes, We learn that her eyes are steady. So we learn so much about her physical form. And that makes sense because it's a Shakta Dhyana mantra. We're focusing on the immanent, on the form. But then we hear some crazy stuff too, like how she is the Vama, the one who sits to the left, as in the goddess, but also the reference to Vamachara, like Vamakshi, Vamangi actually. Bhagastham, she's established in the Bhaga. Bhaga means yoni. Bhaga means vagina. And here Bhagastha means that she's established in the Bhaga, the yoni. So Swanata, she is the wife of the Lord Ramakrishna, here described as Lord Shiva. So very quickly we go from Holy Mother as a woman with white clothes and bangles, Bengali woman with long flowing hair and gentle and steady eyes. We go from that to like the most exalted depiction of the goddess Bhavani, of Ṣoḍaśī, of Tarini. So let's chant this Dhyana mantra, the meditation mantra together. I'll put it on the screen so you can see. And of course it starts with one should meditate upon, and then it goes on to describe her. So we'll just chant along with this. And I right now won't translate so much. Of course you can see like Shveta Vastra, meaning her clothes are white, like that. Hema Lankara Bhushitam, she's in golden ornaments, like that. But a lot of things are abstract, like she's Pradayinim, the giver of Jnana and Bhakti. She's Shubhram, the auspicious. She's Jyotirmayim, saturated or pervaded by light. She is like, the energy of Sri Ramakrishna. And you'll see over here that she is Radhika, she is Janaki, she is Sita, like that. So, Janaki means Sita, Radhika, Krishna's consort. So like that, you'll see things that are very familiar. Those studying Sanskrit, you can see a lot of these are in the second case. Devim, Dvibhujam, Sthiralochanam, like that. And Lochana means eyes. Her eyes are here described as steady, Sthira Lochanam. And it's very important actually that she's two-armed, Dvibhuja, for reasons we'll get into later. We know that the more arms a deity has, the more phantasmagorical a deity is. In some sense, the further removed from us is the deity. But the more humanoid, or rather the more relatable the deity is, the deeper our insight. So if we can see the two-armed woman, one's own wife, as the ultimate be-all end-all of Shakta philosophy and practice, that would be the highest state. So here it's distinctly important that God comes not with a mace and with four arms and with like a conch or anything, but like as this like weird guy sitting on a cot in a temple garden, going into samadhi and like giggling and saying weird shit. Like that's distinctly important, to be able to see God in some weirdo like that. And to be able to see God in a simple Bengali woman who is none other than the highest manifestation of the goddess, like that's something. And so it's important that she has Dvibhuja, two hands. So like that. Let's see what the Dhyanam says. We'll chant it together if you'd like. And we'll just, in our heart, everybody knows what Holy Mother looks like, probably. So in your heart, as you chant this mantra, this invocatory formula, just visualize Holy Mother in the heart. Om Dhyaya Chitta Sarojhastham Sukhasi Nam Kripamayim Prasanna Vadanam Devim Dvibhujam Sthiralochanam Alulayita Keshardha Vakshastala Vimanditam Shveta Vastra Vritar Dhangam Hema Lankara Bhushitam Swakrodanyas Tahastam Cha Jnana Bhakti Pradayinim Shubhram Jyotirmayim Jiva Papa Santapaharini Ramakrishna Gata Pranam Tanama Shravana Priyam Tadbhavaranjita Karam Jagan Matar Swarupinim Janaki Radhika Rupa Dharinim Sarvamangalam Chinmayim Varadam Nityam Sarada Mokshadayinim. And that's one of the hymns or meditation mantras, and it was actually chanted in her presence, actually. Allegedly, she heard it composed and chanted, and she was pleased. She enjoyed it very much. That's one. And the second one is a different dhyanam, composed in another place, and is also chanted. This is slightly more tantric. The first one, notice, we learn that she is the mother of the whole world. She is Swarupini, she is of the form Jagan Matar, the mother of the whole world. She is Janaki, Sita, Radhika, and she is Sarvamangala, the goddess Durga. She is Chinmayi, meaning pure non-dual consciousness, all-pervasive consciousness, the one who gives boons, Varada, the eternal Sarada, the goddess of knowledge. She is the giver of liberation. Now this next dhyanam is slightly more esoteric. So we'll chant it together, starting from here. Second dhyanam. Snehamayim Shivam Shantam Bhukti Mukti Pradayinim Sarva Jivatrana Kartrim Saradam Jnanadayinim Dhyayet Hridam Bhuje Devim Tarunaruna Vigraham Varabhaya Karam Shantam Smitothulam Mukham Bhujam Stalapadma Pratikasha Padam Bhoja Shushobhanam Shuklam Bharadharam Dhiram Lajja Patavibhushitam Prasannam Dharmakamarta Mokshadam Vishwamangalam Svanatavam Bhagastham Bhaktanugrahakarinim Bhaktanugrahakarinim. And a beautiful idea that she's giving, of course, here in the first dhyana, moksha. She's giving liberation. Moksha dayinim. She is the one who gives liberation. But in the second dhyanam, notice she is pradayinim, the giver of bhukti as well as mukti. This is important. Not only does she give moksha, she also gives bhoga or bhukti, worldly enjoyment. And that is again repeated here in this dharma, kama, artha, moksha, dham. So the four goals of life: dharma, righteousness; kama, desire and the fulfillment thereof; artha, wealth, or to cultivate some kind of legacy or meaning in this world; and of course moksha, liberation. These are all things that she gives. She is the da, moksha da, the giver of liberation, as well as dharma, artha, kama. So when we think of the Divine Mother, we often think of her as like Ramakrishna, being very moksha oriented, very liberation oriented. But unlike Sri Ramakrishna, who is a manifestation of the vairagyatva par excellence, Holy Mother, who also of course in her life exemplified that, is none other than the Divine Mother, the one who in the Chandi gives our king his kingdom, and who gives the merchant his samadhi. She gives both bhukti and mukti, and both of these are expressed here. So not only that, notice that she's the vigraha, her form is aruna, meaning red. So the idea that she has red skin, that's interesting, because in the first dhyanam, she's described as a Bengali woman with two arms and with hair falling to one side, with steady eyes, wearing white clothes and whatnot. The outer form, the exoteric Holy Mother, which is still quite esoteric. And now even deeper we understand, she's none other than Jaggadhātri, the goddess with red skin, who is none other than Lalita or Ṣoḍaśī. And of course, there are all these very interesting ideas about the moon, about Svanata, Lord Shiva, about being to his left and being established in the yoni, as I said earlier. And her gift, the ultimate gift as it were, is the fact that she gives grace but to her devotees. So she is the one who gives grace to devotees, which is a concept I want to more deeply study with you tonight, because there's something about the goddess that is unique, and why goddess worship is especially powerful, and why when we worship Sri Ramakrishna, it makes more sense to approach Holy Mother for reasons that we'll get into in just a bit. I want to offer now her Gayatri mantra. There are a few versions of it. One version is to include her bija Aim as well. Aim is a bija typically associated to Thakur, Sri Ramakrishna, but of course in Holy Mother's case, Hrim is the bija of the Divine Mother. Of course, these are secret bijas. They're often only revealed in Diksha. Of course, Holy Mother's grace is such that she never denies Diksha to anybody. So I think she would be very happy for these secrets, which are incredibly esoteric, to be at least made accessible to some extent. Though even to whatever extent we make it accessible, even then they will remain secret. The ones who are meant to hear them will hear them at the time when they are to be heard. So this bija, Hrim, as you know, is the Ma bija par excellence. Lajja bija, Hrit bija, Maya bija, call it what you want. It is the ultimate Shakta bija. And if you add Aim, of course, Aim Hrim, you can see how that links to Saraswati, links to Sarada, whatnot. But we'll just go with how it's pronounced here in the Paddhati. Here it's given as Hrim. So her Gayatri then would be as follows. Om Hrim Sāradaye Vidmahe Vishwa Jananye Dhimahi Tanno Mata Prachodayat Om. It said here we should chant it thrice, so twice more, let's chant it. Om Hrim Sāradaye Vidmahe Vishwa Jananye Dhimahi Tanno Mata Prachodayat Om. Om Hrim Sāradaye Vidmahe Vishwa Jananye Dhimahi Tanno Mata Prachodayat Om. May that Sarada illumine my mind. May that mother of the entire cosmos guide my intellect. Salutations to this mother, Mata. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Saradarpanam Astu. Jai Ma Sarada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Om Ma. Jai Ma. Alright, I want to talk about some esoteric things today, if you don't mind. Things that are somewhat orally conveyed in the context of our lineage, in our tradition, and perhaps also printed, available also, but in somewhat more obscure texts, like reminiscences, for instance, from Swami Arupananda and others about Holy Mother, and some of these like stories that we get sort of through the grapevine about what it was like to be with Holy Mother, and some maybe more controversial things about Holy Mother even, that maybe confound our understanding, at least theologically give us a few things to think about. But before that, I just want to say hello, it's so good to see you, Danny. Today is auspicious to see you, Ma, on Holy Mother's birthday, to see my Guru Bhagini, Danny there, to see all my Guru Bhaginis on this day, my Guru sisters and Guru Bhais. It's like special, because today is such a special day for us. It in fact is maybe the most special day. We don't make a big deal of it because Holy Mother is one of those things you can't really, nothing really to be said. It's just too esoteric, too profound, too deep to talk about. Shivaratri, you can make a big fuss about it. You can jump around and make some noise. Even Kali Puja, I can get very excited and very like enthusiastic, and we post like 5 or 6 videos in the course of like 3 days, and we're always like kind of full of fervor. But with Holy Mother, something about it is just, it's a different bhava. It's something inward, it's something precious, something sacred. It's not very easy to talk about or say very much about. In fact, I was also thinking of maybe like calling off this evening's classes in the name of Holy Mother Jayanti. It's like, it's one of those things that we just want to sit with and spend some time with. Not least of all because it happens in December, kind of close to the solstice. I mean, in the Gregorian calendar, I think she was born the 22nd of December, I'm not mistaken. By the Vedic calendar, it's the 8th day moon of the waning fortnight in the month of Mrgaśirsha, which happens to be today. So today is the 12th of December. It's the half moon for reasons we'll get into in a bit. That's very important. That gives us a clue as to how to understand Holy Mother. But in any case, it's in December that we worship Holy Mother. It's near the winter solstice. So it's a time of, like, especially in the northern hemisphere, it's winter, we're going inward. It can be often also a heavy time. In the context of Christian mysticism, it's on the 25th day that the sun begins the journey again. From the point of view of us on earth, we can see the sun, as it were, stops between December 21st and December 25th. And so, as you know, the early Christians, they were referencing a lot of the Egyptian mythos that came from Alexandria. Like a lot of this stuff was being developed in the 2nd century in Alexandria as far as Christian mystical traditions are concerned. And they were getting a lot of these mystery cults from Egypt. Whether or not they were actually Egyptian, or whether they were not, or not they were like somewhat Alexandrian, sort of New Age, if you will, I don't know, it's hard to say. But there's this idea that the sun represents Osiris, of course, and it's during these 4 days that Osiris, the solar deity, is dismembered, he's destroyed. And of course you can think of Ra, and you can think of all these other solar deities who ride the solar barge, but particularly Osiris and his connection to Jesus cannot, of course, be overstated, because Osiris is an underworld resurrection figure who is, as it were, crucified or martyred by the world, and his brother Set decapitates him, dismembers him, and then Isis or Osar and Oset then have to like work together to reconstruct Osiris's body. So we talked a lot about the Shakta Pitas in Bharat, how in different parts of India there are different parts of the Divine Mother that have fallen and have commanded cults of worship. So Mother's Yoni is in Kamakya, and we go there to confront her in her most ultimate form. Similarly, Osiris's penis is a very important thing, and it's like a lingam that has fallen in a certain place, and a group of priestesses guard over it, and there's a temple to his lingam. And like that, different parts of Osiris are in different parts of Egypt and the Upper and Lower Nile. It's very similar mythos of the earth becoming sanctified as a result of a dismembered deity becoming mapped onto the physical geography of that place. So Shakta Pitas, the temples of Osiris, all of that's something we talked about previously on a separate occasion. Now, coming to the idea of Osiris and the sun, it's during the 21st through to the 25th that the sun almost like stops in the sky, as it were. So this is like the 3 days of Christ's disappearance. There he is amongst his disciples. It's well that they eat and drink and make merry, for they are with the bridegroom. Like that, everyone is so happy, full of joy. As long as you're with him, they feel the spirituality. Christ arguably doesn't need to teach at all. His life is his teaching. He doesn't need to give teachings. He doesn't need to like take groups of students aside and teach them how to do nyasas and stuff like that. All of that is superfluous when you're in the presence of the Christ. You don't need esoteric teachings. You don't need modalities and practices. You don't need any of these things. What use can form have when you have God himself in the room? When force is present, form is dispensed. So with Christ, when you're with him, the whole thing is a majarkuti, a mart of joy, a mansion of mirth. And it's good that they eat and drink and make merry, for they are with the bridegroom. So like that, happy days pass in the presence of the Christ, days of trial and tribulation, no doubt, but intense days, days that were truly lived. And arguably all of these direct disciples, we'll talk about them a lot today actually with regards to Holy Mother, some very important connections between Holy Mother and Mother Mary, and also Mary of Magdala, and of course Holy Mother and the direct disciples of Christ, because a lot of what we understand about Holy Mother comes from the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, especially Sarada and Yogananda. So with that, we have to think about the disciples of Christ, because Sri Ramakrishna himself sort of related the two. Especially in the case of Sarada and Peter. Anyway, all of this aside, we'll put that aside for now, we'll talk about it later. But the thing to consider now is that the disciples of Christ, when they lost the Christ, it was a very difficult time. You know, you can see in Acts, they're all freaking out. It's a very crazy time. But those 3 days especially, when the Christ disappears and he's God himself. And some of his disciples think that he's here to like lead an actual political revolt against Roman tyranny. Like Judas and others might be under the opinion that or the assumption that this is not an internal struggle, like inner awakening. Rather, this is an actual political external event that is supposed to happen. The Christ as the Son of God is here to redeem the chosen people. And that doesn't happen. He dies. The Christ, like the God-man, is drawn and quartered, as it were, to use the Osiris example, or he's dragged across the street and whipped and jeered at and finally crucified and ultimately stabbed, and here he is, he's dead. And now he's in a tomb. And Mary is going to come with some oil, and she's going to pour some oil in the morning and all of that. But as they're dressing him up, as they're putting him in the tomb, as they're about to push the rock into place, it's really terrifying actually to think about the fact that God came, and the moment you realize that he was God, within a few days he was dragged off to the crucifix and crucified and killed. That's so disturbing. And not just that, I mean, just what to say of God himself. Even your guru, even your friend, somebody that you spend time with and have laughs with and have meals with, to think about that person being crucified and to know that person. Just imagine knowing someone and knowing that they're a good person. They never once meant any harm to anybody. Not only are they a good person, they're an exceptionally saintly person. Never mind the claim that he's the Son of God. Never mind the fact that he's your guru. Forget even that he's your friend. Even if you just somewhat nominally or marginally knew him. Even then, if you meet him and then you see what happened to him, it's disturbing. It's disturbing to see good, saintly people who never once harmed anybody in this world, to see such people crucified and dying of such a horrible death after being defamed and treated in that way. It's painful. It's disturbing. So those 3 days, you can imagine, are very disturbing days. And you can imagine, mythologically, from the solar point of view, it's they're dark days. Literally, the sun sort of stops. The winter solstice is the death of the sun. And that's existentially terrifying, because if the sun were to even stop for one moment, then the whole world would freeze over. If the sun were to delay even 1 millisecond, everything would end. Everything depends upon the sun. And this is a metaphor that Sri Krishna in the Gita plays upon. He says, I am the sun. I have nothing to gain, nothing to lose. And look at me. I give and give and give, for it is my nature to give. It is the nature of the sun to be sunny. And so it's a wonderful thing. Without that, then how will the Beatles say, here comes the sun? With great joy, they greet the sun. Usually I don't. When the sun is cresting, I'm oh fuck, here comes the sun. Another all-nighter, I'm fucked. That's usually my attitude. But I guess sometimes if you had a difficult night and it's a dark night, then you see the sun and you're here comes the sun, the birds start to sing again, there's fresh hope, the day is anew. And then there's something beautiful about it, a new beginning. There's something nice about light and about heat, especially if it's cold. All night long you're shivering, you're scared, you can't do anything because maybe your fire went out, you're out of fuel. And then imagine, in the midst of that fear and that cold and that darkness and that very physical fear even, what to say of an emotional, psychological, and even spiritual fear, suddenly the sun appears and you're saved. The heat comes and you're warm. The light comes and you can move around and fix your situation. And not only that, there's something spiritual about solar light, something uplifting. Not just about the birdsong, but about that first few rays of the sun. So much so that many yogis go and stare at it. There's a sun-gazing practice that people do because of the power, physiologically, psychologically, and of course spiritually, of those first few rays of the sun. So imagine then how horrific it is, given the cold, given the darkness, given the spiritual significance of the sun. Imagine how horrific it is for the sun to just stop, just not be there for a little while. And that's what the solstice is like. It's a long night, a deep night, a dark night of the soul, if you will, where Osiris, the king, the rightful ruler, the pharaoh, upon whom we depend on for life and sustenance and order and security, he's dead. He got invited to a wedding feast or something. No, not a wedding feast, a dinner party. He was invited to a dinner party, and their dinner party game wasn't charades. It was chop up your pharaoh into little itty bits and pieces because you're jealous or something like that. That's horrific. So he's dead. Osiris is dead, and the sun has stopped, and now the world is freaking out. What will we do? What will happen now? There's a moment of uncertainty. Then on the 25th, which is Christmas Day, the birth of Jesus Christ, if you will, in the Osirian sense, I guess you could say, in the Egyptian mythos, the sun starts to move again as it appears on earth. So that's the beginning of the new cycle. And so Jesus, as a solar deity, surrounded by the 12 disciples, who, as of course, undeniably represent the 12 solar houses through which the sun moves. This is an important moment when the sun starts moving again. So these 3 days, 21st to the 24th, and of course the 25th being the day of solar renewal, this can be called the dark night of the soul. The 3 days when Christ is gone, he's in the underworld, and finally Mary sees him on the 4th day. So Christmas, which is coming up soon, is not just the birth of the Christ. It's like the thrice blessed day, if you will. Like when we think of the Buddha and we celebrate him on the full moon of usually May, Vaishak, that Vaishak full moon, which is for a lot of people the first day of the calendar year, you know. But for Vaishak full moon, the spring full moon, we don't think of just the Buddha's birth, the literal birth of this guy named Prince Gautama, who would later become the Buddha. We also think of the day of his enlightenment, the day when under the Bodhi tree he realized the impermanence inherent in all things and thereby attained the effortless joy of recognizing his non-existence as an ego. And not only that, we also recognize his death day. All these 3 days are significant. The birth of the Buddha, the realization of the Buddha, and the physical death of the Buddha, or the Mahasamadhi, when the Buddha kicks his physical body and resumes his Dharmakaya form. There's Dharmakaya there, Jaima. Going from Nirmanakaya, the avatara, Jaima, to the arguably Sambhogakaya even. Maybe he persists as a Shakta being, a pure spirit in the archetypical realm, or he just dissolves into the clear light, into Dharmakaya. So that's a big day. It's a birthday. Death on one plane is birth in another plane, just like birth in this plane is death in other planes, as it were. So these are all birthdays. The Christ's birthday is also his day of reappearance, if you will, his Jayanti, his appearance day. So when we think of the 25th of December, which is coming up, we're contemplating the sun renewing its journey. We're contemplating the Christ's birthday, his reappearance. But we cannot have the 25th. Like, that wouldn't be so dramatic and so meaningful a moment without those 3 days that precede it. What would be the point of Christ reappearing if he didn't first get crucified and killed? It only makes sense then that this is a miracle if he is killed first and, like, confirmed to be killed. Like, they see his dead body and they know he's physically dead. And just like with Lazarus, he himself now comes out of the tomb, as it were. The tomb is empty. And not only that, Mary is the first one to see him, which is exactly what happens in Holy Mother's case. There's a very important mythos here between Osiris and the resurrection ark and the Christ, and the way Mary plays a role in all of this. So Holy Mother, she's associated to Mary. She's of course associated to Christ in the sense that Sri Ramakrishna is the Christ and whatnot. But the first point I want to make is that her birthday, Holy Mother's birthday, happens in this time of darkness. At least back then in the Gregorian calendar when she was born, it was the 22nd of December. This was the days prior to the reawakening of the sun, to the return of the Christ. These are dark days, days of the winter solstice. So now it's the 12th of December as I'm giving this talk. The 8th day of the waning moon. That's also important because the moon is moving into the new moon. So often the waxing moon is associated to auspiciousness and Lalita Ṣoḍaśī, in the sense of the full moon radiance, the plenitude of the Divine Mother, all of that spring mother, joyous mother, young mother kind of thing. But Holy Mother is born in the waning moon. That's important because now as we celebrate her, we are looking towards the new moon, the darkest night, and arguably, you guys, the darkest night of the year for many people because it's the new moon around the time of the solstice. So there is a darkness. There is a certain undeniable heaviness. And you can feel that Saturnian, Plutonian kind of presence even when you study Holy Mother's life. It's a dark, as it were, a dark life from the outset. It looks like one, but within we know she was filled with bliss, and she says it was like somebody kept a picture of bliss near me at all times. So we know Holy Mother was deeply blissful, but in a way that a superficial mind cannot understand. So it is important that in a dark, heavy Saturnian time, we celebrate the Holy Mother. Because only those who are very serious, whose minds are made very subtle, often through much hardship, only such people will understand Holy Mother. She's very hard to understand. We understand nothing of Holy Mother. And last year, when I was giving talks about the Holy Mother, I prefaced all of them with this: Swarupam Twadiyam Navindanti Devaha. As Sri Shankara points out in the Kalakashtakam, not even the gods understand your true nature, Mother. So how can we then deign to say anything about you? Of course, we're going to make a caricature out of all of this. We're going to attempt to sculpt the statue of the Divine Mother, and instead we're going to end up with some half-baked, half-formed monkey. Like, we have to acknowledge now, before we even talk about the Holy Mother, that we have no right to. That everything we're going to say is going to be way off the mark, because she's too mysterious for words, too deep for understanding. And in my case, I'll need lifetimes of spiritual practice and undeniable grace before I can even scratch the surface of this mystery called Holy Mother. So as such, I thought maybe let's just not have our classes tonight, and let's instead call off the evening and all be by ourselves and feel the heaviness of December, of this solstice, and go within and sense the joy and peace and blessedness that arises in that darkness, in that depth, and maybe even in that despair. So Holy Mother is a secret deity. She's Lajja, and by Lajja is not necessarily meant modest, it's meant also private, secret. She's adorned with modesty, Lajja Vibhushita, meaning she is hidden, as it were, by a lot of modesty. She's a veiled deity, much like Mary is a veiled deity, much like all forms of the Divine Mother are veiled. They're hidden. Their true meaning, Sara, meaning the essence, Sara, is usually hidden. So coming to the name now, Sarada, Sharoda, if you're Bengali, the Bengali accent makes it Sharoda, but the Sanskrit here is Sarada. Sarada, interestingly, is a name of the patron goddess of Kashmir, believe it or not. Because in Kashmir, it's a place of great learning. Kings have patronized great scholars and poets and mystics there, especially during the rule of King Avantivarman. So historically speaking, Kashmir is a politically turbulent place. Now more so than ever, of course. Now it's a hotly disputed territory. It's trying for its own autonomy. It's trying to be an autonomous region, but it's being like kind of pushed back and forth between India and Pakistan. A lot of terrorism goes on there. In the 90s, of course, terrorism was at its height. It's like a really contested place, and it breaks our heart because it is the tilak of India. Most beautiful, arguably, place in India. Of course, everywhere is beautiful in India. Everywhere is beautiful everywhere. But something about Kashmir, there's something mysterious about it. And it's also cosmopolitan. The reason why, arguably, Kashmir became such a center for learning is because of its proximity to the Silk Road. Just like how Kerala becomes such a learned place because of its proximity to the West Coast and therefore trade routes and whatnot. Just like Bengal is a place of learning because its proximity to the entire world through the British colony and, of course, its access to the Bay of Bengal. And you see, whenever you have any kind of cosmopolitanism, whether it's in LA or in New York or in Singapore, you're likely to see, or Athens, to use another example, a flourishing of knowledge, of art. And Kashmir is a place of great knowledge, of great art. In fact, in the libraries of Varanasi and Kashmir are stored some of the most important texts in our tradition and our history. The Kashmir series of texts and studies, for instance, preserved much of Abhinavagupta's work. So it makes sense then that the patron deity of Kashmir, this place of great learning, and of course this liminal space of many different cultures coming together to share their knowledge. Alexandria is no different. The lady of that place, the presiding deity, the Sthana Devata, the patron, if you will, is Sarada, which is another name for Saraswati. Saraswati, the god of learning. So Sarada is the patron deity of Kashmir. It's also no surprise then that the script, as Joel G is rightly pointing out, that we use in many... See, when you look at some tantric materials from Kashmir, I can't read it actually, because I can read Devanagari, and even then the manuscripts are often hard to read because the words are so close and there's corruption and all that. But I can't read the original texts from Kashmir because a lot of them were written in Sanskrit. They're in Sanskrit. I can understand them if you like show me the transliteration, but I can't read them because they are in Sarada script. They're not in Devanagari. And that shows you that Sanskrit itself can be written in many different dialects. Like there's Granthi, for instance. Yeah, we'll talk about the Lady of Guadalupe, whose feast day is coming up tomorrow, I believe. Friday, right? Tomorrow, Friday, is the feast day of the Lady of Guadalupe. So anyway, hold on to that thought. There's lots of things happening. It's very exciting. But Sarada being the name of the script, which is preserving a lot of the knowledge and wisdom of the Tantric tradition, especially since many of these masters in the 9th and 10th century were Tantric scholars, Tantric teachers, Tantric masters. But also, of course, Sarada being the patron deity of learning, that's important. Now, in Shankara's case, he, Sri Shankara in the 8th century or 9th century was establishing these mattas, these places of learning. These institutions were very important because at that time, as per the influence of Buddhism, the Vedas were no longer studied as they were before. And of course, naturally, they had fallen into disrepute because of the mismanagement of the priestly elite who were using superstition and things like that to subjugate the people. So the Buddha's message was vivifying, it was clarifying, and it was ennobling to return autonomy back to people. But as Buddhism progresses in India, we lose touch of the Buddha's message. Naturally, we forget what our avatars say, we misunderstand and we misrepresent, and we make a mess of the whole thing. So India is now in a period of spiritual decline. Buddhism in India at this time is reduced to like black magic, as it were, and like kind of weird superstitious practices, and there isn't really that same fervor as there was during the time of the Buddha. And people are lost. Like, they don't have the Vedas, so they don't have any like real social structure. They don't have any concept of God, because that's of course one of the first things that goes away when we consider the Buddhist revelation. And if there's no God, if there's no Vedas, if there's no eternal law, and if there's no innate soul, you can see that without the teachings of the Buddha, without proper understanding of the teachings of the Buddha, these easily lead into a kind of nihilism. And so what you find in India is this spiritual degeneration, kings and warlords being incredibly problematic. It's kind of like, think of the Weimar Republic after World War I or something like that. It's a degenerate time in India's history. By degenerate, I mean just like chaotic and confused, and nobody really has any meaning or purpose, and they're hungry for some spirituality. So Shankara is important because he takes the message of the Buddha, and without diluting at all the Buddha's precision and emphasis on self-effort, on emphasis on the impersonal, non-theistic absolute, without diluting that in the slightest, what Sri Shankara is able to do is reintegrate the Vedas. He's able to reintegrate the eternal soul, the idea of God, and even the holy books of the Hindus, without at any point diluting the message of the Buddha. So we often think, oh, Buddhism and Hinduism are at odds. There are hundreds of years of debate between Advaita Vedanta and Buddhist traditions. But you know how it is. Masters teach and fools continue to debate. The masters have no dispute. I shouldn't say that, because Sri Shankara did directly rebut the Buddha in several places. But you can see what Sri Shankara is teaching is almost verbatim what the Buddha is teaching. The only difference, though, is that he's using Vedic language. He's restoring the Vedas, he's bringing back the Upanishads, etc., etc. So this is a renewal and a restoration of a heritage that would otherwise be lost. Naturally, in order to maintain something like this, you need organization. You need institutions of learning to perpetuate these knowledge systems. So Shankara establishes many, about 4, if not 5. The 5th one is supposedly secret. But there are 4 of these. They continue to stand to this very day in various parts of India. In fact, the monks of the Ramakrishna mission, they belong to the Shankara Dashnami, the 10 orders of monastic traditions that Sri Shankara himself founded. And in this tradition, there are 4 places of learning. And Sarada is the patron deity of the place called Sringeri Matta. Sringeri is very important. It's important because it's close to me, of course. It's in the south. That's one reason why I love it. But it's also important because it's the seat, if you will, of Sri Vidya in the south. Kanchipuram, of course, is one place. Madurai, I would argue Madurai Meenakshi is the seat of Sri Vidya, but all that aside, the thing about Sringeri Matta is it's there that either the original Shankara or some Shankara after him established the worship of the Sri Chakra. And that's very important because it takes an otherwise esoteric tantric tradition and popularizes it, makes it mainstream. Of course, one thing to note is that in Sringeri Matta, although they worship this beautiful, you should really see this Sri Chakra is made of ruby. Like, each point of it is ruby, like the very expensive and beautiful ruby. And if you want to see like wealth, of course you can go to the Vatican, but you can also come to South India, and there you will see ornate golden thrones and golden umbrellas, and oh my god, there's nothing like the way they worship the goddess in the south. It's just so wealthy, and that it turns some people off. They're like, ugh, I want the simplicity of Christ, and instead I'm getting some Vatican coded, pomp and fanfare and whatnot. Be that as it may, the goddess is the goddess of the world too. Yeah, Ṣoḍaśī is Bhoga, and so it's from her grace that all of this comes. It's true, they say, like, the reason why these temples are so wealthy is because Sri Shankara himself established the Sri Chakra there. He himself performed the Prana Pratishta of the goddess in a place like Kanchipuram. No doubt the best saris in India are going to come from there. No doubt there's going to be so much money. And so much so that, like, the Sri Chakra became so popular all over the south because it was associated to wealth. That's how you get the link between the goddess Shri or Ṣoḍaśī and the goddess Lakshmi. Because we saw that any place in which Shankara establishes Sri Chakra, most noticeably Kanchipuram, most noticeably Sringeri Matta, there you saw such wealth, unbelievable wealth. But even though they worship the goddess in this ruby Sri Chakra, in this golden ornate kind of hall, even then you have to remember that this is Samayachara, meaning it's like a kind of right-hand path, orthodox, Brahmanical way of approaching Ṣoḍaśī, which is contrasted to a more, I would even argue, traditional. By traditional I mean ancient, and by ancient I mean like original Kaula form of worshipping this goddess in the Dakshinamnaya. So the thing about Shankara is he establishes a mata called Sringeri Mata, and unsurprisingly the deity, who is the presiding deity if not Sarada? Sarada, who is the patron of Kashmir, is also the patron deity for Sri Shankara when he establishes Sringeri Mata. So I was doing a wedding recently actually. And I'm marrying these two brahmanas, and they are from Sringeri Mata. So I asked them, okay, what's your kula-devī? What's your family deity? And both of them unanimously said Sarada. I thought I would ask just in case, but I knew already if they were associated to Sringeri Mata, of course that's their deity. So it's easy for me because they have in mind Sarada. I'm in the lineage of one Lalitā Devi, so the mantras flow very naturally. Of course, it's the same Sarada, but you should remember always that the name Sarada is very very significant. It refers to the one who presides over knowledge. She is Saraswati, but importantly, she is the presiding deity of Sringeri Mata, the heart of Sri Vidya, in the entire place of India, if you will, if not in the entire world. I'm just kidding. What's the heart of Sri Vidya, if not your own heart? There's no place, arguably, but this one in which the goddess is installed. But if we're going to speak geographically, if we're going to speak historically, which is such a vulgar way of speaking when it comes to spiritual things, then we must acknowledge the role of Sringeri Mata in the propagation of Sri Vidya and the preservation even of this tradition called Sri Vidya, the knowledge, the Vidya of the goddess Shri, or the goddess Ṣoḍaśī, who is none other than Sarada. Let's look at the name more closely though. Sara means essence. Da means the one who gives. So Sarada means the one who gives the essence. Sara is another name for the goddess as Kali, Kali or Anakya or something. In chapter 4 of the Tantra Sara, Abhinavagupta gives us a series of synonyms so that we understand the one you call Chandika, or the one she calls Paravak, or the one she calls Urmi, there's Urmi, or the one she calls Drik, or the one she calls Chandi or Chamunda. Don't forget, what you're calling Kali, what she's calling Chandika, what I'm calling Sarada, what you're calling Vak, what you're calling Urmi, they all refer to the same reality, Shakti, Parashakti. And so what Abhinava does is brilliant. He gives just all the possible synonyms, or a variety of synonyms that you're likely to encounter in the tantric text, and also in the world of tantric practice, you're likely to hear these different names, and he very quickly puts them all together and says they all mean the same thing. So Sara is one of those names. He lists them along with others like Vak and Kali and Vani and various others, Urmi and various others. So Sarada, Sara, meaning the essence, Sarada is the one who gives the essence. So it's not just the essence, it's also the way that essence is through grace bestowed upon the devotee. And of course, what is the essence? It's pure non-dual consciousness, as you know. Sarada here then is the essence and the giver of essence. When we think of Sri Ramakrishna, she is the essence of Sri Ramakrishna. Now I want to tell you something else that's kind of esoteric. And by the way, in the course of tonight's discussion, I intend to do a few things. The first thing I want to do is I want to point to Sarada. Having said a few things already, I want to make this case that Sārada Devī is the goddess Parvati. But not just that, I want to point out the fact that Parvati is Kali, and naturally Kali/Durga. But then I want to say that Kali/Durga is Jaggadhātri, another very important deity in the more esoteric understanding of Sarada, because that was her family deity, and arguably that was the mantra she had. Not many people know this. Although she worshipped Kali, really probably her mantra was a Jaggadhātri mantra, and her family was mainly devoted to the deity Jaggadhātri. So that's another interesting thing to talk about. And what Jaggadhātri has to do with Lalita, that's a connection we should look at, because they're both red-skinned goddesses. But then, of course, Ṣoḍaśī. Like, we know that Holy Mother was worshipped by Sri Ramakrishna as Ṣoḍaśī, which is a very important detail. So I want to make the point, first and foremost, that what we call Sārada Devī, Holy Mother Sārada Devī, who is a human, who existed at a certain point in history, she is none other than the goddess Parvati. And then I'm going to make the case that Parvati is none other than Kali/Durga. Then we'll make the case that this is none other than the goddess named Jaggadhātri. And then we'll point to Ṣoḍaśī and link all of these names together, much like Abhinavagupta does in chapter 4 of the Tantra Sara. So we'll do that. That's my first project. My second project is to point to the Padhati, the ritual manual, so you can see how Holy Mother is worshipped. You'll learn a lot, I think, about Shakti Puja, about general Shakti Puja, by looking at the worship manual of the goddess Sarada, Holy Mother. And if you're doing Kali Puja in the Ramakrishna tradition, you can't worship Kali without worshipping Holy Mother. They're one and the same. And Holy Mother gets 10 items of worship. Kali gets 16 in Kali Puja. Everyone else gets 5. Holy Mother gets 10, which shows you that there's a link between Kali and Holy Mother. Sometimes we even give Holy Mother 16. And if you worship Holy Mother, sometimes you don't even need to go that extra step and do Kali Puja. You've already worshipped Kali in the form of Holy Mother. That's the second thing I want to do. If there's some time left over, Ma willing, let's see. Who knows? And if we feel like it, then we can look at something maybe a little edgier. We'll look at the Vamachara Padati, the left-hand path Kali Padati, and there we see the Shakti Puja, the worship of one's consort as the goddess. Of course, that's a sex rite, but not necessarily. It can be understood on many levels. It could be an actual physical sex act, like the Yamala on the level of the body. But as Abhinava points out in chapter 29, there's also Yamala in the prana, in the breath, and also in consciousness. And which exact Yamala, which exact kind of sexual union Sri Ramakrishna had with his wife, Holy Mother, on that fateful Palaharni Kali Puja day, we don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody was there, as it were. Nobody was in the room. There's eyewitness accounts of like what happened before, maybe some of the preliminaries, but as to what happened in the room, we only have the accounts of Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna. And why would they tell us what happened in the privacy of their own nuptial chamber, if you will, between Shiva and Parvati? All we get is the pillow talk after. That's what the Tantra is. And so given that, we don't want to speculate as to exactly what kind of Yamala happened, but we do have some padatis that more or less reference that ritual, so we might as well look at one. And there are a few. Of course, chapter 29 is a very fleshed out padati for this kind of puja, and I know like many of you are excited about that, naturally, unsurprisingly, asking for a friend, I know. And we will, of course, without a doubt, go through it mantra by mantra, and there will come a time when we'll take chapter 29 and do it there. But I thought maybe we could start with this padati. It's an abbreviated version of chapter 29, of obviously referencing a lot from chapter 29, but it gives you the basics of how to install a nyasa on the Shakti, meaning one's consort, and then what that sex rite looks like. And the basic idea, of course, is just the recognition of God in the living, breathing human body and the worship of God in that human body as per the situation demands. So a wonderful form of Shakti Puja is what Swami Vivekananda is arguing for. He's telling us that when you're in front of somebody who is hungry, the best possible puja you could ever perform is feeding that hungry person. Similarly, if you are married to somebody and it's your first night in the bridal chamber, if you will, in that same sense, the best possible thing you could do is to worship that woman as the goddess and pleasure her to the best of your ability and give her your very best. And so it's that same modality that before you is a woman and now you're about to enter into a sexual union with her. She's the goddess. How will you conduct yourself? Like that. It's the same idea of worshiping God in the immanence, except of course it's prioritizing the sex act as being uniquely a metaphor for Shiva and Shakti. And of course being a particularly intense experience in the energetic system of what it means to be a biological being. Like, oh my God, the power of an orgasm, the power of union, the idea of two becoming one. There's all these reasons why the sex act itself can be seen as a particularly important place for this ideal to be articulated. And then not least of all because we often struggle to think of God and sex in the same breath. We often feel, each of us in our own way, a sort of hang-up around our body and around the way this body interacts with other bodies. So divinizing sex is, of course, one of those very controversial things that gives Tantra its bad name, as it were, its bad rep. But at the same time, it's also one of the best things that the tradition offers. Undoubtedly, because Abhinavagupta says so, and because Sri Ramakrishna did this ritual, as it were, to what extent we don't know, and that was the final thing that he did. And I often say, like, if it's the final thing that he did, it was the culmination of his 12 years of intense sadhana. Clearly then, the worship of God as woman in this particular ritual that we're going to study maybe tonight, maybe on some other night, to some degree, like, that's worth saying something. I mean, that's saying something. That's worth noticing that, like, this was the final thing that he did. Arguably because it's the hardest. It's the most absolute. It's the most advanced, most refined. It's, for lack of a better word, the essence of Tantra, Sara. So Sarada, the essence of all of this, could be the Ṣoḍaśī Puja, the essence of Tantra, the worship of God in the woman's body, the worship of women. That is Tantra. Abhinavagupta also makes a joke. He said, isn't it so convenient? Abhinava says this, in one place. He said, isn't it convenient, I'm paraphrasing, that the only people you want to call Devi are young women that you're attracted to? He makes that point in one place. He says there's something dangerous here, something hypocritical. If you want to worship God as woman, the great danger for a heterosexual male practitioner of Tantra is that, well, that's going to be something that you're going to use selectively in order to, meet psychological and physiological needs that you maybe want to disguise under a spiritual veneer. And Abhinava, even there's some text like the 77 verses on Krama or something, Krama. Anyway, there in that verse it says, this is difficult to learn, and many gurus purport a knowledge of the kaula if only to sleep with other man's wives or something like that. So it like accuses these gurus of being adulterers who have no real knowledge, but who are willing to kind of use the knowledge of the kaula marga for this kind of manipulation or this kind of conduct, as it were. So, and Abhinava himself in the Tantra Loka points out that he himself was taken by many of these false gurus. So there's no end to risk here in this tradition when it comes to the worship of God as woman. And then the question of like the heteronormativity of all of this, can this be flipped? Like, can a woman worship a man in the same way? Absolutely, as Holy Mother demonstrated with her whole life. She did pretty much nothing but Sri Ramakrishna Puja, both when he was alive and especially when he kicked the body. Then she would only ever worship pictures of Sri Ramakrishna. It's an interesting thing. She was performing this worship to her husband the way he literally performed it to her while she was in her body. And then of course the question of like, not just the gender thing, but the heteronormativity, like what about two partners or two or more partners that might be gender non-binary or both of them male or both of them female? Arguably the same would apply. The concept of Shakti, the concept of Shiva, that's fluid. That's not based on genitals. And given that, I think that when you look at the Shakti Puja, it's very exciting because we in that puja, in the Padati, we see that the body that's being referenced here, it's not a physical body, it's a mantric body. And not only that, when we do the nyasa even, in the Padati that you're all studying as part of our Thursday evening puja class, you'll see that whether or not you're a male or female or non-binary practitioner, you're meant to visualize your body, this body, as the goddess's body. You think of yourself as having breasts and 3 eyes and things like that, showing you that the body is indeed fluid, that the energy body can take on any shape, and the physical body is but a reflex of that energy body, and what you are within that expression is something that you can move around with mantras. It's within your expression actually, and hence Ardhanareshwara becomes very important. And Danny of course has an incredible Padati from the Kula-devī Tantra, and there, like, notice that the deity is Ardhanareshwara. But why is it Ardhanareshwara? Because it's Yamala, it's Shiva and Shakti in Yamala. By the way, I wanted to send you some dhyana mantras for that. It's very exciting because in this Padati there are huge swaths of dhyanams for Ardhanareshwara, because technically, if we're really going to think of the Kaula Marga, Ardhanareshwara or Ardhanarishwara, she is the patron deity of the tradition. She is the ultimate symbol of divinity in this tradition. They're not just like split in two, like that's a metaphor for them having sex. So Shiva and Shakti in Yamala is the patron deity of the tradition. Not Shiva, not Shakti. The Kaula Marga is about Kula and Akula in Yamala. So thinking of the Holy Mother in this context of the one who was worshipped by a great Tantric, if not the best Tantric of the Kali Yuga, in this particular ritual is also quite exciting. So if there's some time, it might not be tonight, but Ma willing, we can look at that Padati a little bit. I know Laleshwari wanted to do so let's try to do that if we can. But I want to start with this, something more esoteric if you don't mind. Something maybe a little more private, a little more secret. I don't mind sharing it though because it is published, so that's why it's kind of okay. But these are like maybe more intimate things that we talk about within the context of the lineage. And therefore they're not usually shared from the lecture pulpit, and nor are they really readily available in some of the more mainstream books in our tradition. So there's this series of books, 2 books, volume 1 and volume 2, called Stories of Vedanta Monks. Now, some of you are not going to like this because you don't like when I suggest new books, because I'm only ever suggesting new books, and I know that your bookshelves are now groaning from a bunch of books that I've been suggesting these past few years and whatnot. But these 2 books are beautiful. They're by Swami Chaitananda. And of course, as you know, Swami Chaitananda is one of the most prolific authors within this tradition. He's translated the Leela Prasanga. He did Holy Mother's Divine Life, her Divine Play. Sri Sarada Devī and her Divine Play. That's the name of that huge book, and it's like the whole life of Holy Mother. If you love Holy Mother, my God, that's like being a kid in a candy shop. It's wonderful. So he did the Girish Ghosh book, he did M's book, he did They Lived with God, and then God Lived with Them, and like there's no end to Swami Chaitananda's prolific historical and devotional presentations of the masters and saints of our tradition. Anyway, there's a book called Stories of Vedanta Monks, the first volume. I don't have the second volume, I have the first volume. And there, Swami Chaitananda gives his personal reminiscences about these various monks that he had the chance to meet. A lot of them are second generation monks, meaning there was Holy Mother, and Holy Mother did most of the initiating. See, Sri Ramakrishna didn't actually initiate that many people. He initiated some people, but we have a misconception that the direct disciples were all given mantras by Sri Ramakrishna. No, that's not true. Rakal maybe, Swami Vivekananda maybe, but Yogin was never given a mantra. Yogin Maharaj was initiated by Holy Mother, and so too with many of the other direct disciples. In fact, almost everyone who was initiated was probably initiated by Holy Mother. And so Holy Mother was Sri Ramakrishna's initiator, like Mary, So now, there are some Swamis like Swami Ashokananda, who was initiated by Swamiji himself through a dream. That's another interesting story. We won't get into it now. But there are all these Swamis who monks of our order and nuns of our order who were initiated by Holy Mother, Asheshanandaji and whatnot. So these are second generation Swamis. First generation being like Turiyananda and Abhedananda and of course Vivekananda and whatnot. So it's Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna, and then the direct disciples who were either initiated by Sri Ramakrishna or more likely Holy Mother. And then there's the second generation. Many of them were initiated by Holy Mother actually, not all of them. Some by Brahmananda, some by Shivananda, etc. Okay, so of these second generation Swamis, Swami Chetanananda, who is a third generation Swami, like my guru, had the opportunity to like meet them and study with them. So he has these reminiscences. And if anything, if you want to learn about spirituality and if you want to learn about our tradition, it's not in those big mainstream books, it's in these reminiscences. Because as my guru once told me after a talk, see, Divya Prana Mataji was giving a talk. Divyananda Prana Mataji was giving a talk, and both of us were attending. And after the talk, my guru took me aside and with great intensity said, don't study the words, study the life. That's spirituality. It's not the talk. It's not the lecture. It's the way that person carries themselves from moment to moment. It's their life that is the teaching. And who cares for a good lecture? Anybody can give a lecture. But then do they live what they say? Like, is their life a living testament to what they talk about on the pulpit? And very rarely is that the case. Usually people say big words, fiery words even, and anybody can be a hero when they're on the spot in front of people. But in their quiet moments, the way they relate to others in life, like when no one is watching, who are they then? That's where spirituality is conveyed. And that's where we fail to look, because we're always busy looking at the lecturer or looking at the pujari or something. We're looking at the murti, as it were, that we fail to look at the devotees, the ones who are bowing before the murti. That's God. God is not in the image, nor is God really necessarily even in the one who prostrates before the image. What Swami Vivekananda taught us is that God is love. Not the lover nor the beloved. God is that love in which the lover and the beloved both melt and dissolve. When the moth and the fire both dissolve into one, that's God, actually, the relational quality, that liminal space, that's God. And that, Swamiji said, is there when the mother cat nurses her kitten. Then we should stand and pray. Similarly, as my guru pointed out, it's not the lecture, it's the life. And I did learn so much from just being in the presence of Swamini Divyananda Prana Mataji and various others, like having lunch with them, walking around with them, like seeing the way they giggle, for instance, how they kick off their shoes and run into the wall. I'll never forget that. Like Divyananda Prana Mataji were on the beach and she kicks off her shoes and with great like delight and with a childlike giggle, runs into the ocean. It was wonderful. It was a cold day. Even I didn't want to do it. I was content to stay on the beach, but she's running into the ocean, giggling, and just that life. That's what happens when we really want to learn spirituality. We become interested in life. What is it called? Spirituality is not taught, it's caught. Or like life gives unto life. So with that said, what Swami Chetanananda is trying to record in these 2 volumes, Stories of Vedanta Monks, is the life of these monks that he had the chance to meet. Some he was more intimate with than others. And they're all wonderful stories of people who are in love with God. Even if you don't believe in God, and even if you don't belong to this tradition and have any investment in the saints of the tradition, it's still a wonderful read because it's just a story of people who like loved truly and sincerely. And stories of miracles even from their own reminiscence. You know how Ramakrishna monks are. They are so grounded, so practical that it's virtually impossible to get any magical thinking out of them. If they've experienced God, they'll very rarely tell you about it. If they've had a vision of the Divine Mother, oh my God, good luck to you trying to get that out of them. They're very private about these kinds of things. And when, say you have a mantra that solves a scorpion sting. This happened. Somebody came to Brahmananda, our Parameshta Guru, and said to him, I have a mantra that solves a scorpion sting. Then Brahmananda took him to the garden, pointed out a herb and said, you know what, this herb also, if you make a tea out of it, will solve a scorpion sting. That's better than your mantra. See, this is the attitude of Ramakrishna Swamis. Pro-medicine, pro-modern science, everything, etc. Like they're very grounded, very practical. Very unlikely will they dance or cry or sing because they keep it deep down inside. When Swami Brahmananda would dance, often he would dance alone in the shrine room before the image of Thakur. And so much so that people would peek in sometimes and just kind of eavesdrop. Is it called eavesdropping when you're like peek? I don't know what it's called. Spying, I think. It's not eavesdropping, it's spying. It's like they would spy on him dancing. And he would only really get into that mood when he was really all alone. So these Swamis are something special. They were very careful not to make a pretense of their spirituality, lest you, get the wrong idea that spirituality is about shaking and about tears. It's not. It's about kindness. It's about depth. It's about surrender and selflessness. It's about those things that are not quite as sexy and don't really do well when it comes to promoting a $2,000 workshop. Having said all of that, though, there are some pretty juicy esoteric things that we encounter in these reminiscences. And it's a wonderful thing that the opening reminiscence in these two volumes, in the first volume at least, is Swami Shankarananda, which we, of course, have a lot of investment in because many of us who took Diksha in this lineage, that's our Parama Guru. For like Danny and I, that's our Parama Guru. For many of you, that's your Parampara Guru, like meaning your Guru's Guru. Like for Danny and I, our Guru's Guru. And Shankarananda, like, is a Sphinx-like character because, like, literally, he was like a Sphinx. Like, he just sat there quietly, didn't say a word. And I'll tell you a story that my guru told me when he first met his guru Shankarananda. So my guru went as a child to the Belur ashrama, the headquarters of the Ramakrishna mission. I think it was on a field trip, like a school field trip or something, and they were wandering about. And in Belur there are these statues of Ramakrishna, of Holy Mother, of Brahmananda, not of Vivekananda. He is a formless, just Om. But everyone else has a marble statue, and it's pretty lifelike. It's life size and lifelike. So then, after seeing all these various statues of Thakur, of Ma, of Swami Brahmananda, my guru asked his teacher or his friend, who was that statue we saw upstairs in the head Swami's room? And they were like, what? The statue? You saw a statue upstairs? Yeah, we saw Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and Brahmana. There was one more statue, right, that we saw upstairs. And they were shocked. And they said to him, that's no statue. That was the President Maharaj Shankarananda. And he thought he was a statue because he was so fair. He was unreasonably fair. Like he was like a very fair Bengali, but his skin looked like marble, and he was unreasonably silent. In fact, his ears were very sensitive. And they used to get pained a lot. He had so much sattva, as it were, that it was almost unbearable for him to interact with the world. He was very sensitive. So people would walk up the stairs and it would hurt his ears. So much so that my guru's job for a long time was just to stand at the foot of the stairs and go shh to people who were passing through during Arati time. That's how he got his Diksha. It was almost impossible to get Diksha from Swami Shankarananda. Just like Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shankarananda was very reticent when it came to Diksha. And Swami Chaitananda, in his reminiscence, tells us that he waited 6 years to get Diksha. He was still a brahmachari that whole time, but for 6 years he was on the waiting list to get Diksha. Can you imagine? For us, we don't really care about Diksha. First, it's nothing. It's like somebody gives us a mantra, whatever. I can go on the internet, I can find some Aghori on Instagram, and they'll be all too ready to give us a mantra, provided that we send a little bit of that American cha-ching, like it's like so easy to get a mantra now that it doesn't even matter. We don't even understand what it is to receive a mantra, especially a mantra within this lineage when Swami Brahmananda and Swami Shankarananda were both so reticent, so unlikely to give Diksha. And then it really meant something you could imagine. Anyway, Swami Shankarananda was very sensitive, very like sattvic and pure, and therefore very like, I guess sensitive is the right word. Very quiet, grave, very still, and deeply absorbed. He was the seventh president of the Ramakrishna Math mission. Deeply absorbed. And he was deeply devoted to Sarada Devi, and he had established a few kind of Sarada Math associated things. His heritage is very much around building and architecture, but along the lines of Sarada Devi and Sarada Math and whatnot, among other things. Anyway, our seventh president, almost never did he give advice. If you asked him for spiritual advice, do you know what he would say? Does anybody want to guess? I've told some of you before. And it's an important thing, it's an important thing that this is what he would say. If you asked him for spiritual advice about anything, how to chant my mantra, what to do if I see ghosts, like I'm getting this hot flash when I sit down to meditate, there's like some heat in the back of my neck, like whatever possible query you could have in spiritual life. If you brought it to Swami Shankaranandaji, my guru's guru, what do you think he would say? Pop quiz, does anybody know? What does Swami Shankarananda most notably have to say whenever approached with any spiritual question whatsoever? 2 words. Almost always he would say, yeah, thank you, Bhairavi Nikala, thank you. Somebody's listening. It's very important. These are perhaps the most important instructions. You're always asking for instructions. It frustrates me. Here they are. What else do you want? Swami Shankarananda felt like these were the highest instructions ever. And do you know how we know? Because he didn't just give those instructions to lay people that would show up to the convent and the monastery. He wasn't just like, oh, read gospel as a way to kind of like dissuade people. Maybe he has deep esoteric teachings. But according to Swami Chaitananda and my own Gurudeva, who were in his inner circle as monastic disciples of the Swami, who had waited years and years and years to get Diksha, even on Diksha day, this mysterious Sphinx-like fair, sensitive Swami would say this, read gospel. In fact, he might say a few more words. He might say, what is there that I could say that's not there in the gospel? Like whatever question you have, any spiritual question whatsoever is there in Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita. So his literal only instructions were, read gospel.
That's it. Read gospel. Katamrita. And back then it was a 5-volume thing. My guru, when he asked for Diksha, he was sent back. This was in the 60s. And he told me the story a while ago. He was sent back and told to read the 5 volumes of the gospel. He diligently did it. 5 volumes of Katamrita. He read them. Then he came back and he said, oh, I read them. And then the Swami was like, oh, really? Go read them again. Sounds like you didn't really read them. Something like that, because arguably if you had read them, oh my God, if you had read them and heard what they had to say, had he but ears, I mean, what would he have heard? Like that question. So Shankarananda was famous for, almost infamous, because it was very frustrating for giving this instruction. Read gospel. Just read the gospel. Like just literally just read Katamrita. And of course he meant the Bengali Katamrita. I don't know how he would have felt about the Swami Nikhilananda translation, English gospel. Because obviously that's very Christianized and there's some problems with that. But that doesn't seem to stop many of us. When you read the gospel, if you have, the ears to hear, if you're open to it, if you're part of this tradition, except for some places where things might be a little sticky and arguably that might have more to do with translation than with the text, then maybe, you can see the value of this instruction. It's profound. Literally everything you could possibly think of or have questions about is there in the gospel. It's huge. It's a voluminous thing. Even the 1-volume Swami Nikhilananda translation, what to say of the 5 volumes Katamrita. Anyway, not only that, Swami Shankarananda's guru, his Guru Deva, Swami Brahmananda, was once asked by a person in a train station for spiritual instruction. Now, Swami Brahmananda is stepping onto the train. The train is about to go. He's stepping onto the train. He turns around and gives this instruction. Read gospel every day. And then the train shoots off. Now you have to remember, the Christ comes and the Christ gives teachings, and then the Christ disciples codify those teachings in the gospel. The gospel means God's spell, the good news, as it were. And in the gospel are stories of the Christ. Who knows if they're accurate or not? Obviously, because some of the gospels, as we know, were written 150 years after the Christ. But whoever that gospel is about is a badass. Like whoever appears in Matthew as the one who points to the birds and to the lavender and who teaches people to be simple and present, whoever the fuck that is awesome, whether or not he existed. So the gospel is really wonderful. The problem is, of course, the politicization of the message of the gospel, which our order is, of course, not at all invulnerable to. Like that happens with us too. But if one reads the gospel on their own without coming into contact with any of these institutions that tell you what to make of your reading, it's a wonderful practice. And that's true of the Bible as it is of any spiritual text. What to say of the Katamrita? The Katamrita is special because there was a guy who was a triple degree holder, who had a photographic memory, who was literally there with Sri Ramakrishna, who recorded much of what Sri Ramakrishna said. There were also 12 other people at least, like Swami Saradananda, who recorded their reminiscences, and that's come out as like Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play and whatnot. There's so many resources about Sri Ramakrishna and about Holy Mother that are so contemporary that it's thrilling to think about what it was like to be with a God person like that. Anyway, having said all of this, Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shankarananda, they would always insist upon just reading the gospel. Okay, now what I'm going to tell you is pretty intimate, pretty personal. Hey, Carl, it's good to see you. I've missed you so much. Jaima, Jaima. So just bear with me. Hello. It's a pretty intimate and personal account from Swami Chaitanananda's Diksha Day. As you know, Diksha is a very sacred moment. It's usually done ritualistically. Of course, in our order, we're very light on the ritual, but still there's some. At least there's a little bit of a mantra or a offering or something. You'll notice, in when I was growing up, the Shaiva Dikshas that I had growing up were so elaborate. Like you get dunked in oil and like these are Shaiva Siddhanta Dikshas, very ritualistic. But in the Ramakrishna mission, they're Tantric Dikshas, but more of a Kaula sort of Diksha, where it's like just a bit casual, but still, because of the power, we don't need all the form. It's like, again, what's the purpose of form when there's force? So a lot of these dikshas are just kind of shotgun dikshas. You just get the mantra, as it were. But still, there are a few flowers or some meditation. So what happened, Swami Chaitananda said, was they came in one morning. At that time, Swami Shankarananda was very ill. See, this is a very private account, very intimate account. And so he was giving diksha from the bedside. And I don't mind sharing it because it's published. As you can see in the reminiscence, Swami Chaitananda says they walk into the room, him and a few other disciples or would-be disciples, all of them brahmacharis, and they sit down, and then Swami Shankarananda sits up on the bed and he takes a few flowers in kurma mudra, it said, in the meditation mudra, and he sits with his eyes closed and he meditates for a little while and then offers the flowers. And right before he did that, it's recorded that he did some japa. He just sat on the bed with his rosary doing some japa. And then after a little bit of japa, a little bit of dhyanam, a little bit of meditation, and then he just offered the flowers. That's it. So much for puja. Here you go. Some flowers have been offered. And then he just gave the mantra. And having given the mantra, he then gave instructions. And believe it or not, because this book is so niche, I think Swami Chaitananda felt it. And because Swami Chaitananda is in his late 80s, I think it's about time that he shares a lot of these secrets. Believe it or not, he gives those instructions in the reminiscence. He tells us a little bit as to what Swami Shankarananda, our guru's, some of you are guru's guru, or our guru's guru, said during Diksha. It's a remarkable thing. And what did he tell them? Of course, read gospel. But before that, he said, here's how you meditate. And when he was teaching how to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, here's what he said. He said, in your heart, imagine a lotus. Seated on top of that lotus is Sri Ramakrishna. He added a side note here. He said, and whenever you worship any deity, know that you are worshiping your ishta, Sri Ramakrishna alone, through all of those deities. So when you worship Ganesh, you're just worshipping your ishta. Whoever your ishta is, if it's Kali, whenever you worship Ganesh, you've already worshipped Kali. Because every deity is an emanation, just like in the Sri Chakra. They're all emanations of the Bindu. And the Bindu is present in every place, even in the Bhupura, as far out as Anima Siddhi and beyond is the Bhupura. So similarly, Kali, or whatever your ishta might be, is present in every deity, whether it's the Christ or Kuan Yin. She's there in all of these forms. So therefore, Swami Shankarananda said, whenever you worship any other deity, know that you are worshipping your ishta only through all of them. That's actually very helpful advice, because a lot of us get confused with the breadth of this tradition. We are told that all gods and goddesses are equally valid, and therefore, we're worshipping Lalita one day, we're worshipping, Mother Mary the next day, and then Mary of Magdala. It's like we get confused. But as long as we have Diksha, then we have a mantra, we have a ishta, then we shouldn't feel confused, because whoever we worship, it's only our ishta anyway that's being worshipped through that. Then Swami Shankarananda flips the script. He says, and you know what else? He didn't quite say it that way, but the reminiscence goes on to say that when you worship Sri Ramakrishna or your ishta, whoever that is, you've already worshipped all the other deities. And the metaphor here is of watering the roots of a tree. You don't have to water all the individual leaves or branches. The moment you water the roots of the tree, you've watered the whole tree. Similarly, the moment you've offered a single flower to Kali, the moment you've done puja in your mind or externally to a single deity, who is your ishta, you've already worshipped all the other deities. It's superfluous then to do a Guru Puja, Ganesh Puja, Shiva Puja. Like your Padati is more or less superfluous. Do you see this? That all you have to do is worship the deity, the Bindu. And by nourishing the Bindu, you've nourished the whole puja. And if you want, you can worship the whole puja krama, you can do the whole Sri Chakra, but it's no big deal, because at the end of the day, you're worshipping only the Bindu through all of that. This was Swami Shankarananda's instruction about the ishta and how to balance depth and breadth. Do you see how genius it is? If you just have this framework, this mentality, then you can worship any deity you want. You won't get distracted. You won't get confused. You won't lose ishta, nishta. And if you have ishta, nishta, meaning deep depth and love for your chosen ideal, then you won't feel like, oh, but what about my family deity? What about this other deity? It's fine. They're all already worshipped within. So it's a wonderful thing. But then he goes on to say, now visualize Sri Ramakrishna. And then visualize in Sri Ramakrishna's heart, like zoom into his heart, and there see within his heart is Holy Mother. That's a stunning instruction, actually. Because if you think about it, he's the essence of this body. So you close your eyes and in your heart, you see Sri Ramakrishna or whatever ishta you have. Then you look into the heart of that ishta. And you have to ask, if you're meditating on Shiva, who is Shiva meditating on? If not Kali. You could say the formless absolute, but she's Kali. Shiva meditates on Parvati. Who does Sri Ramakrishna meditate on? Holy Mother, actually. As it were, as per this instruction. So if you want to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, you go deeper, as it were, and you see in Sri Ramakrishna's heart, Holy Mother also. Just yesterday, no, not yesterday. What day is it today? Thursday. Oh my God, time flies. Sunday evening, I had pulled an all-nighter. Saturday night, I'm like, it's in the end of the day. We're at Swamiji house. I'm exhausted. I'm sitting at my Guru Deva's feet. And it's a moment, a kind of an intimate moment where just, there's chaos. People are moving around, but I'm just sitting with Guru Deva. I lean and I say, you have a special attraction to Holy Mother, don't you? I don't know. Of course, I know that. Like, it's not like a surprise, but I just feel like asking it, feel like saying it, just in the interest of relating and connecting. Then he looks at me and he smiles sweetly and cheekily, and he's like, yeah. And then, of course, he most of the time he spent was at Sarada Peeth, Sarada Peeth is near the Ramakrishna Belur Math, but that's where our Guru Deva did most of his service. So Sarada is very important, of course, for us, given my Guru and given Shankarananda's instruction, but she's important for the entire lineage. And in this intimate depiction of instructions given during Diksha, hopefully we can understand how rare it is to hear something like this. But during Diksha, in this instruction, we learn something, that truly is she Sarada, the giver of the essence. She is Sara, the essence of Sri Ramakrishna. So whatever we talk about, we're elliptically more or less beating around the bush. It's Holy Mother through and through. And when we chant any Shakta mantra, whether it's a Kali mantra, whether it's a Ṣoḍaśī mantra, whatever it might be, Holy Mother is a perfectly viable murti or vigraha or form to be visualizing while you chant that mantra, because ultimately it all points to her. Even if you have a Ramakrishna mantra, it ultimately points to her. Every mantra points to her. Why? Because she is Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam. She is the one in whom all Vidyas, Kali, Tara, Ṣoḍaśī, Bhuvaneshwari, all of them are contained in Holy Mother. So some of you are frustrated because some of you want to do more like Bhagala Homa and you want to do more Tara Puja, and that's fine. You can do that. I'm just trying to save you a step, you guys. I'm trying to save you a couple of lifetimes, if not, at least a few years, if not lifetimes. I'm saying just chill. Go to Holy Mother. You'll get what you want much more quickly than if you try to do it your way. That's why, if you want to do it your way, why even come to a lineage? Why even take mantra? Why even ask for instruction? If you want instruction, here's some instruction. Worship Holy Mother. That's what our gurus told us. That's what their gurus told them. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna ultimately taught us. Not with his instruction necessarily, of course, also with his instruction, but mainly with his life. So here we are now, talking about Holy Mother. There's nothing else to talk about, and there's no way we can talk about it. And that's why Bhairavi Nikila had requested in our group chat some time ago. She was like, can we just talk about Holy Mother? And I said to her, I will do nothing but from this point on. And I meant it too. Because no matter what I'm talking about, we're only ever talking about Holy Mother. She is the Guru Shakti, the energy that runs through the lineage. And if we don't believe that, just get a picture of her, put her up for a few moments and look at her for a little bit. And by her grace, all of this will be revealed. And of course, we're speaking somewhat mystically. We're making somewhat dramatic statements, hyperbolic statements, and at risk of sounding fanatical. But the thing to remember about Holy Mother is that there's no fanaticism in her. The thing about Holy Mother above all is absolute, unconditional, radical acceptance of all individuals, including those individuals that Sri Ramakrishna himself would have rejected, that Swami Brahmananda himself rejected. Those people who were otherwise unfit for spirituality in every way, shape, and form, Holy Mother accepted readily. So her disciples were like crooks, as well as wonderful scholars and whatnot, but mostly crooks. And people would tease her about this. They would say, look at Sri Ramakrishna's disciples. Swami Vivekananda, Swami Brahmananda. It seemed like Sri Ramakrishna was only surrounded by saints. He never touched a disciple who didn't become a saint. Whereas you, look at your disciples. There's Hamza, who is now still in jail, like all your guys are all like crooks and drunkards. And that's a very telling thing, because that's the bhava of Holy Mother, which gives us another clue. If you want Shiva, if you want Ramakrishna, don't go to either Shiva or Ramakrishna. Because problem is, they'll probably be meditating. So they won't be able to do anything for you. They won't even be able to feed you because they're not wholly there. They're like absorbed. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna was like. Most of the time, he would be unavailable because he would be in samadhi. What are you going to learn? You can learn from his life. You can feel the bhava. You can be part of that transmission, surely. But who's going to feed you? Who's going to actually teach you? Who's going to give you mantra? Who's going to instruct you? It's likely going to be Holy Mother. And who's going to accept you even? Probably not even Sri Ramakrishna. It probably might not even look at you, might not want to look at you, might not want to let you into his room even. Shiva was like that in that he was open to all gods and demons, but it's hard to access him because he's all the way up there in Mount Kailash. So if you were a demon, yeah, he might give you a boon or something, but you better be like a Ravana level demon to be able to get up to Mount Kailash and do that level of tapasya before Shiva is even ready to give you any time of day. So Shiva, Ramakrishna, in other words, the impersonal, the formulas, you can't go to that direct. Some can, but very few of us can. Most of us are crooks and drunkards, and that's just that's wonderful. There's no need to be anything but that. Whether you're a scavenger or a saint makes no difference to Holy Mother. All can come to her and all will be given mantras, all will be given spiritual instruction. At least, at the very least, all will be fed. On every level of our being, we are fed. Hence, she is Bhaktanugrahakarinim. She is truly the giver of grace to devotees. She herself is the grace that devotees have attained, that she is even here. Holy Mother is grace, Lord Shiva's grace. I guess you could say his benevolence is embodied in Holy Mother. Or in Shakti and Parvati. So now let me come to my main topic. I want to talk about Holy Mother as Parvati, and I want to point to Kali, Durga, Jaggadhātri, and Ṣoḍaśī. This link I think is important because often we get confused because of all these different names, and we don't really know how to ground all these various deities in Holy Mother. The first point to make here is that it's just really difficult to talk about Holy Mother because often the narratives about her are somewhat unreliable in one sense because they're often, unlike Sri Ramakrishna, told maybe without as much stenographic accuracy, but even then she herself is a very, very private figure, veiled, and even then if you had access to her, she was very indrawn. It's hard to really get a lot out of her because she didn't feel the need necessarily to reveal so much about her own life. See, men have this thing where often they become very central in the narrative because that's like just the way we write history. Our history is often oriented around great individuals, and those individuals tend to be men. So it's someone like Sri Ramakrishna or someone, especially like someone like Vivekananda, that's easy to write a history because he does so much. He's so extroverted. And not only that, he says so much about himself. So much so that it was possible to make a movie called Vivekananda by Vivekananda. Isn't that stunning? Like in that movie, the script is just what Swamiji had to say about himself. And Swamiji had a lot to say about himself, about Holy Mother, especially about Sri Ramakrishna. But about Holy Mother, he was a bit reticent. Now, a few clues as to who Holy Mother is. Swamiji was scared of her. Yeah, that's interesting. Hamza wasn't. Hamza is this Muslim crook who, like, the moment he got out of jail, made a beeline for Holy Mother's house, stopped to steal some pumpkins on the way in order to present them to Holy Mother. And, like, he's just, like, this rough and tough. Like, he wasn't scared of Holy Mother. He, like, strode right in. A woman by herself, Bengali woman, sitting by herself in the room. Hamza, fresh out of prison with a beard, covered in sweat, bare-chested. He had no qualms about just walking into this woman's room and sitting down and giving the stolen pumpkins. And he was lovingly accepted by Holy Mother, you know? So it's like the people who didn't really understand her, I don't want to say Hamza didn't, but most people didn't have any like qualms about being close to her and being intimate with her. And I think part of that is her grace. She hides who she really is. She appears like just a sweet, nourishing Bengali woman, much like my guru. If you meet my guru, sometimes you don't understand. Like it's hard to understand what he is because he comes across as a sweet Bengali man, you know. It's only like really when he's alone in the room or some special moments you realize this is not just that. There's something else. So too with Brahmananda, he's fishing, you know, he's just sitting there with a fishing rod or playing cards or smoking out of his hookah or reclining like a king on the couch. Like you kind of forget who you're talking to. This is Ramakrishna himself. But spirituality is not the kind of thing that can be so formulaically expressed that you know what to look for even. You have to be sensitized to it. So too with Holy Mother, it's like kind of hard to really understand what's being presented. We certainly don't. And what to say of what to say of us, the people who actually saw her, they're the ones who say they don't really understand her. Because every time they thought they knew, she would do something that would completely confound their understanding. So with most of the disciples, they felt so intimate with her. They would come and sit with her at all hours of the day, just like with Sri Ramakrishna. She was always awake, as it were. And they would come and sit with her and confide in her. You know, she would almost painstakingly, almost sometimes at great personal expense, just listen to you, whatever you had to say, however inane your story was. Like it was just however mundane or like just banal your story was. She always made time to listen to it. And she would just sit there all day long, listening to people tell her their grievances. She would give a little bit of advice. She would give mantra diksha every now and then, usually in a very casual way. She would just tell someone to go take a bath, come back, and then she would just give the mantra like that. She gave so many people mantras and like so many scoundrels who didn't have any chance getting mantras anywhere else, they would come to her and she would give them a mantra, no problem. And often they would walk great distances. And because of that, because of her mother's heart, she made sure they were fed. And because they'd walked such a great distance, she would do everything in her power to make them feel welcome, to allow them to rest, and to tell their stories. And if they needed to get mantras, everything. Okay, but people felt very familiar with her and very intimate with her almost right away upon meeting her. They immediately felt comfortable. But not Swami Vivekananda. This was his literal Guru Shakti, like his Guru's wife. Like he had grown up with her, as it were. He had eaten chapatis from her hand. Like he's, above all, the closest you can imagine to her. And what to say of Saradananda and Yogananda. But even he felt great trepidation whenever he was going to see her. There's one story where he's with Brahmananda and others, and they're on a boat, and they're all sailing, the boat's going across from one side to the other. Belumat's on the other side of the river from Dakshineshwar. So you're going, and he's on the ferry, and he leans out of the ferry and starts scooping copious amounts of Ganga Jal into his mouth. That's a dangerous thing to do in Kolkata, like in the Ganga there. It's like somewhat, I mean, it's the Ganga, it's pure, but still, if you drink enough of it, you're going to get ill. Gangotri is different. Upriver, no problem. But this is like in the middle of a city and there are British steamers and whatnot. It's like brown Ganga water. And Swamiji is scooping it into his mouth, you know. And his brother disciples are horrified. They're like, Swamiji, stop. You're going to get sick. And he says, no, you don't understand. We're going to see Holy Mother. I have to be pure. Can you imagine? Swamiji is about to stand in front of Holy Mother, who everyone else has no problem being with, and he feels this fear, knowing who she really is. She's Kali, the Divine Mother herself. That's one story. Another story is he would bring people to come and salute the Holy Mother. He would tell them to bow but not touch her feet. He would say the moment you touched her feet, she would immediately take away all of your karmas. And so it seems desirable to touch her feet, except Swamiji felt like if you loved Holy Mother, you wouldn't do something like that. Like just like don't touch her feet. Something like that. Like just be careful. She'll suck up all the karmas. And not only that, it might be powerful. If you touch her feet, pat, you might immediately be liberated. Can your nerves handle that? So with that disclaimer, people would bow to her, but often without touching her feet. That was Swami Vivekananda's instruction. And he used to get very frustrated if people didn't bow to her because that would, demonstrate that they didn't understand her. So he had a special reverence for her. He was familiar with Sri Ramakrishna. He was kind of terrified of Holy Mother. He was always full of trepidation whenever he would approach her. There were some instances, though, where he would run into the room like a young, triumphant child and say to her, Mother, look what I've done. I've conquered America. And he would say, back then I came as Hanuman. I jumped between India and Lanka. Now I jumped to America. And just like that, I conquered it. Like a child, he's like relating to his mother, something that he's proud of. And Holy Mother was there and Swamiji was there. And often when Swamiji would make a decision that people didn't like, they would write to Holy Mother about it, and Holy Mother would immediately take Swamiji's side. Like that famous case of Mayavati Ashrama. There Swamiji said, no idol worship. Like you're not supposed to worship, no puja, nothing. There's pure Advaita Vedanta. In other words, pure, not even Advaita Vedanta, just Advaita. Just pure, non-dual, formless, impersonal, I am that kind of bhava. And of course, naturally, the people who are running Mayavati, they put up a picture of Sri Ramakrishna. It is, after all, a part of the Ramakrishna Martin mission. It makes sense to put up the image of the, Guru in whose name all of this is established. When Swamiji saw that, he was livid. He said, his literal words in Bengali were, oh, this old man has crept in here now too, and he made the monks get rid of the image. His own guru, literally God himself, Swamiji felt that picture was not appropriate. That was not the purpose of Mayavati. Mayavati was a different kind of experiment. And so these boys who had put up the picture of Ramakrishna necessarily and naturally felt offended, and they wrote to Holy Mother about it, the Supreme Court. And they said, see what Swamiji did? Naren, they call him Naren, has demanded that the picture of Sri Ramakrishna be taken down. And Holy Mother's response, it is good that Naren did what he did. You should follow him. For don't you know that our master is Advaita? She didn't say Advaitin, she said Advaita. Don't you know that Sri Ramakrishna is non-dual? Not a non-dualist, but non-dual. That's an important statement. There are other instances in which people get dismissed because they stole from the pantry, and then they go to Holy Mother about it, and Holy Mother insists that they get rehired. Things like that, where Holy Mother is the supreme court. She forgives, and the other swamis kick you out. You go to her, she puts you back in work. She's the person you write to, but you don't always get the response you think you're going to get. One time, Holy Mother, she asked people to go and ask Brahmananda why he worships the Divine Mother. Isn't Swami Brahmananda a Brahmagyani? In other words, hasn't he realized the formless, impersonal Brahman? Why then does he insist upon Holy Mother worship? And not just Holy Mother, Mother worship. Why does he worship Durga and whatnot? And Holy Mother asked these Swamis or Brahmacharis to go and ask Swami Brahmananda about it. So they went and asked him, and then he apparently wrote a letter back to Holy Mother. And in that letter, he quoted Shankara. And even Shankara in one place. And my Guru Deva a long time ago wrote a letter to me and quoted the same thing from Shankara, a special connection to this particular verse from Shankara. So I had written a poem to Kali, and then I on Christmas or something, I gave that poem to my Guru. My Guru wrote back and then quoted this verse, which Brahmananda also quoted to these boys and wrote in the letter to Holy Mother. It's a very important verse. Here, Shankara himself, the Kevala Advaitin par excellence, he himself says that we should worship Holy Mother, or Divine Mother, because she alone holds the keys. Oh, no, because she alone breaks down the doors to non-dual knowledge. And the way Brahmananda framed it was she holds the keys to non-dual knowledge. So nothing happens but by the Divine Mother's grace. So therefore, anybody, whether or not you want to worship Shiva or the non-dual impersonal, you have to go through Holy Mother. So everyone should worship Holy Mother. And you can see one of Sri Ramakrishna's central teachings is emphasis on the worship of the goddess. He would almost always emphasize this. Whoever you are, wherever you are, even if you're a Vaishnava, worship Radha. Worship the goddess. Emphasis on the motherhood of God. And why? You can see because uniquely the motherhood of God is the kind of thing that is maximally inclusive. So although some of what I'm saying might sound somewhat fanatical, like fanatical Shaktism, like just worship the Divine Mother, if we understand this more subtly, you'll see that the exact opposite is meant. Literally any form, even a male form, is the worship of the Divine Mother. For she is all forms. She is formality itself. Like in the Dhyana Mantra of Sri Ramakrishna, it's formless. But in the Dhyana Mantra of Holy Mother, there's form. So even if you want to worship a blue guy sitting on a mat in the Himalayas, that's still mother worship because you're worshipping a form. And not only that, Holy Mother, although she worshipped Sri Ramakrishna, was open to all the avatars. She encouraged everyone, each in their own mode, to worship. Anyway, last year we gave a talk on her life. And that was the main thing that I wanted to share with you. It was a wonderful life. And I think it was called Who is Holy Mother or something. I think we gave 2 or 3 lectures. One was called Holy Mother as Tantric Guru. I highly recommend that one. We see Holy Mother in her role as initiator, as guru, as like spiritual role model. And in that lecture, we also talked about her as disciple, because nobody can be a guru who isn't also a disciple. In fact, what is a guru if not a disciple of some other guru who is himself or herself or themselves a disciple of some other disciple? It's disciplic succession. You see, apostolic succession is a very powerful thing, but each person in that succession, in that krama, is themselves a student. So, what was Holy Mother like as a student? And by studying her as a student, we get a role model for what we should be like as students. What was she like as a teacher? So, that lecture is called Holy Mother as Tāntrik Guru, Sri Sarada as Tāntrik Guru, or something like that. Jaima Jaima. So, that's a nice lecture. I liked it. And then before that, we gave a lecture called Who is Holy Mother or something like that. Vijaya Devi, she made a point. She said, you really made her sound like a girl boss in that one. Because we talked about all of those like places in which she was so independent, especially when she took charge of her own learning and tried to learn how to read by herself, as it were, getting one of her relatives to teach her because she really wanted to read, and how the male members of her family like almost like forbade her from reading, and yet she persisted. Stuff like that. We talked about Holy Mother's life as a human being, and we emphasized her human aspect. So we had some lectures last year on biographical points, yes. The year before, we gave a lecture on the Tantra of Sarada Devi. It was also a Thursday night, I believe. And in that lecture, we talked about Holy Mother's ultimate teaching, her final teaching, her Mahavakya, or Uttamavada. And she says, right before she kicks the body, that if you want peace, my child, don't find fault with others. Look at your own faults. No one is a stranger to you. The entire world is your own. This is a profound non-dual teaching, actually. And we can see there's so much depth to it. And that's what that lecture was all about. So over the years, we've been giving all these different lectures on the Holy Mother. I thought this year, I'm just going to focus on this one point that I'm going to make now. When we consider Saradananda, there's something very interesting to point out here. Saradananda, when he was young, Sarat Maharaj, when he approached Sri Ramakrishna, he was immediately identified as Peter. Sri Ramakrishna was in an ecstatic mood, and he pointed to Sharat and he pointed to Ṣoḍaśī. They both of them came together, and he said, I remember you. You guys were there with the Christ. You were Peter, or something like that. So that's weird. I mean, these are just 2 young boys, members of the Brahmo Samaj. They come to see some eccentric holy man, and the first thing they learn is that they were there with the Christ. And then, weirdly enough, people always say Sri Ramakrishna didn't have books. Fie upon that. He had books, because otherwise, how could this story have happened? He asked someone to go get a Bible, and he kept a Bible. Unsurprising, it's the British colonial period. And they brought out the Bible and they read stuff. He had stuff read from the Bible. And interestingly, some of it was the epistles of St. Paul, and much about like monasticism, becoming eunuchs for the Christ, like that. It's better to marry than to burn. But if you must burn, better to marry. Like stuff like that. And like why people become monastics. Weirdly enough, Sarat and Ṣoḍaśī would later be monastics. So this would be an important thing for them to hear. But it was all from the Bible. And that makes sense because they were, in the previous incarnation allegedly, as part of the Christ avatara, the consorts and companions and disciples of the Christ, the avatara angshas, the Ishvara kotis of the Christ. So it makes sense then that when they're approaching Sri Ramakrishna, he slips into his Christ bhava and immediately starts quoting from the Bible and like exegetically discussing the Bible. That's an interesting thing. Furthermore, Swami Saradananda is considered to be Peter. And what is Peter to the Christ? The cornerstone of his church. It is Peter upon which that the Christ establishes his church. Hence, St. Petersburg and the Church of St. Peter, like that. So Peter is very important. In fact, Peter is almost antithetical to Mary of Magdala. This is very interesting. Peter is a bit of an antagonist to Mary. He opposes Mary because he thinks he has a monopoly on the Christ teaching. And Mary goes off and gives her version of what she encountered, and Peter goes off and gives his version. And you could argue what Peter gives becomes the modern Catholic Church. And what Mary gives is this underground, subversive sort of spiritual renaissance that only now we're starting to feel in this age of the Divine Mother worship. So having said that, Peter is the cornerstone upon which Christ builds his church. Now Ramakrishna treats Saradananda in the same way. He in fact in one place sits on him as if to demonstrate that upon Sarada is based me. Like my teaching is based on Saradana. It's unsurprising then that Saradananda would become the general secretary, the first general secretary, and basically the manager of everything. Like he was the one who established the mission. Like, just like Peter, he built the Belur Mutt and mission. Okay, this is where it gets interesting and very tantric. Saradananda, who was Peter, who is the cornerstone, who is the foundation of the building, the edifice that is our institution, his favorite deity when he was a young child was Ganesh. Isn't that interesting? And he approached Ramakrishna and he said, I think my ishta is Ganesh. See, he was already identifying himself with Ganesh and he wanted to worship Ganesh. Ramakrishna said, no, no, no. And brought him into the ashram, into the mandir, pointed to Shiva and said, that's your ishta. And he looked at Shiva under Holy Mother, under Divine Mother. And then he saw Shiva and Shiva was alive. And then that's how he got his mantra diksha. So Saradananda was one of the Ishvara Kotis who got mantra diksha from Sri Ramakrishna directly, but he got a Shiva mantra. But this is important. Ganesh is like Peter associated with foundations, with establishing structure. And without worshipping Ganesh, you can't get to the Divine Mother, because without worshipping the body, without coming to terms with your physical embodiment, there can be no spirituality. So in Tantric Puja, and since of course it's a puja class, we should point this out, Ganesh is worshipped first. In most versions of puja, Ganesh is worshipped first. We worship the Guru first. For us, Guru comes before the body. What's the point of this decaying sack of blood and bones, this flesh meat suit, if not for my Guru? My Guru made it a body. Before my Guru, it was a corpse. After my Guru gave mantra, it became finally a body. And in this kula, finally I can establish the bindu. So Guru, we worship the Guru first. But you have to remember that most tantric lineages, especially in the Shaiva world, will worship Ganesh first. Ganesh is the foundation. He's in the Mooladhara chakra. And that's where Kundalini is. Unless you get past this doorman, if you will, this bouncer at the club, don't even think about partying in the Shakta Shaiva world. You'll never enter the inner sanctum of the Sri Chakra without first encountering Ganesh. Now, those of you worshipping Kali, you'll know in the Kali Yantra, who is the southern-facing deity who guards the Bhupura? It's Ganesh. And not just any Ganesh, a really scary Ganesh. Heramba Ganesh, the Uchishta Ganesh, the Ganesh who eats meat. Like meat-eating Ganesh. And this Ganesh is said to be covered in blood, right? His dhyanam. Kharvam stula tanum gajendra vadanam. Lambodaram sundaram. Prasyandan madaganda lubda madupavyalo. Langan dashalam. And then look. Danta gata vitari rudirar. Sindura shobhakaram. This Ganesh is beautiful as if adorned with vermilion. But wait, it's not vermilion. It's the blood of his enemies that he has torn asunder with his single tusk. That Ganesh. Fierce Ganesh. Heramba Ganesh. And he's fed meat and whatnot. He's an outdoor Ganesh, if you will. So this Ganesh is the first person you encounter in the Kali Yantra. You cannot meet Kali until you get past her Batukas, her Kshetrapalas, her Yoginis. These are the outside guards, if you will. Now think to Ganesha's origin story. He was crafted, as it were, out of clay and then brought to life through Prana Pratishta by Mother herself and established as a guard. His first role is as sentry, as bouncer. And even Shiva can't get past him. Ganesh defends Mother's house from even Shiva. That shows you something. And then, of course, Shiva violently cuts Ganesha's head off and storms into the room and encounters the Divine Mother, who then gets him to apologize and whatnot. And that, therefore, Shiva, out of penance, brings Ganesh back to life, gives him an elephant head, and installs him as the general, if you will, of his army of Ganas. So Ganesh becomes Ganapati, or Ganesha, the lord of the Ganas, the violent forces. Saradananda loved Ganesh. Sri Ramakrishna didn't let him worship Ganesh though. Sri Ramakrishna made sure that he worshipped Shiva. But his role was very much like Ganesha's role. Like Saradananda was not only the general secretary, not only the foundation upon which the institution of Ramakrishna was built, but he was also Holy Mother's personal attendant. This is a very interesting point. He would stand downstairs and he made sure that people weren't bothering Holy Mother, because people would do that. They would break in at all hours of the day and they would sit there with her and just tell her their grandmother stories and all of their little problems all throughout their lives. And then she would just sit there and listen for hours and hours and hours. She would miss her meals. She would not sleep regularly because of this. And she used to be very anxious about their lives. And she was always asking after them. It was aggravating for Holy Mother to be constantly in this river of humanity. Saradananda, like Ganesh, stood sentry and he barred entry most of the time for people to come and see Holy Mother, to protect her. So he was very, very close to her. He was her attendant, her personal sevak, if you will. And so in Udbodan House, Holy Mother's office in Kolkata, Saradananda is a very big presence there. Yes. Doesn't this sound familiar? Although Saradananda worshipped Shiva, we know that he took a Shiva mantra. We also know that he was very much affected by Ganesh. He had an affinity for Ganesh. Isn't it interesting to see how Saradananda plays the role of Ganesh and stands like sentry, preventing people from entering to see Holy Mother? It gets even more interesting. So he feels himself to be the son of Holy Mother, obviously, because Ganesh is the son of Parvati. He has deep loyalty and love for Holy Mother. But there's another detail that you have to know here. He also felt like it was his penance to take care of Holy Mother for reasons we don't need to get into now. Same with Yogin Maharaj. He also took care of Holy Mother, partly out of penance. They both sort of felt bad for something that they did in the past. We don't need to get into it. But it almost makes me feel like it's Peter atoning for the way that he treated Mary. It's just my conjecture. Why would he do so much work for Holy Mother, like fanatically? Well, as Ganesh, that makes sense. But also, I guess, as Peter, now having done this whole Christ Leela, I think he's learned from it. The idea that an Ishvara Koti can learn, that's important to me. And maybe in the Christ Leela, Peter realized what a mistake he had made by walking away from Mary of Magdala, by leaving her to her own devices and trying to establish Christ's church based on what he understood. Now he knows the futility of that, having seen what happened, right? So now he's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and be with you, Mary. I'm just going to sit at the feet of the Divine Mother Mary, and I'm just going to protect you, and I'm going to build based on what you taught me, not what I think is what he taught me. I think, interesting, just a conjecture I wanted to make. Yeah, it could be. But then here's where it gets interesting. There's one more piece here that I think is worth pointing out. If indeed Saradananda is Ganesh, and hopefully the reasons that we've offered are convincing, then who is Holy Mother, if not Parvati? Parvati makes Ganesh, Ganesh is Parvati's sentry. There's also another very nice story where a woman comes to see Holy Mother, and Saradananda says no. He's standing on the steps and he's like, no, you cannot see her. She's sleeping now. And this woman legitimately pushes Saradananda off the steps and runs up to see Holy Mother. And actually, both Holy Mother and Saradananda are happy about that. They're like, okay, yeah, this is a true devotee. Doesn't that remind you a bit of Shiva? Like Shiva needed to see Parvati. He wouldn't take no for an answer. So he lopped off Ganesha's head and then went in to see Parvati. And like, it's just beautiful to see how these archetypes that we encounter in the Purana play themselves out in the lives of people like Ramakrishna, like in the lives of Saradananda and Holy Mother. So if you study Puranas, if you study Upanishads, if you study Tantras, there's no better place to look than the biographies of these people, Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna, even the direct disciples, because in their lives, you see these archetypes playing out. They're so high up there, they're so transparent to reality that it's like a living Purana, a living Upanishad, a living Tantra in each and every moment. It makes way more sense to study their lives actually than to study these texts. Anyway, having said all of that, if indeed you believe me that Saradananda is both Peter and both Ganesh, then it makes this case for Holy Mother as both Mary of Magdala actually, and also as Parvati. Because it's Parvati who is the centerpiece of this Puranic myth involving Ganesh. Now, who is Parvati? Again, she's a mysterious figure because we know that she sits to the left of Shiva. Sometimes she sits on Shiva's lap. She's Shiva's consort, his Shakti. But what does it mean to be Shiva Shakti? Again, we know from the Chandi, coming to another text now, that it's Parvati. It's this woman who sits with Shiva and Mount Kailash who becomes Ambika. And Ambika is none other than the wrathful and warlike goddess of the Chandi, who kills demons, who not only kills demons but also mothers them. So Chandika, Chandi, this is another name for Ambika. The name Durga is very weird, okay? Like we should remember the word Durga is something that the Divine Mother in the Chandi says will only come later. There's going to be a demon named Durga, and then when I slay Durga, then they will call me Durga. That technically hasn't happened yet. So the fact that we call her Durga is kind of weird. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, actually, when people say Durga is different from Kali, and that Kali and Durga are somehow different from Ambika, and that Ambika is somehow different than Parvati. It's a bit of a pet peeve because that seems like something distinctly arising in the modern era, and it clearly references a misunderstanding of Shaktism, where most Shaktas have this seamless understanding of the goddesses being Durga and being Kali and being Chandika and being Ambika. And in fact, in the Chandi itself, anticipating this tendency of the mind to diversify what is truly non-dual, even the goddess in the 11th chapter has to say, Ekaivaham, I am one, you fool, dushta, you absolute idiot. You think I am many different goddesses? Look. And then she withdraws all the goddesses into herself and she says, I am one. Who is that one? We call her Shakti. And so the word Kali, the word Durga, the word Chandi, the word Chandika, and the word Ambika can all be seen to mean the same thing. Naturally, Parvati. So Parvati is Kali. Okay, when people often say, oh, but Parvati is the soft form of Kali. I don't know about all that, Baba. It's like different names for the same person. These different facets of the same personality. I don't know. I don't know if there's even value in saying they are different facets because that only almost makes it sound like we're locking in those facets. Like Kali is just mother's wrath and Durga is just mother's like, I don't know, dharmic role, or like Parvati is mother when she's off duty and lounging with Shiva and taking a bath in Manasarova. Like, I don't know, you guys, like, I think that's like unfair to the Divine Mother, who has infinite moods and therefore cannot be pigeonholed into any one of these moods by the name Kali or Durga or Tarini or this or that. Like, there's just Shakti, Adi Shakti or Para Shakti, and she is who we call Parvati and Durga and Kali. Anyway, I don't need to belabor this point because during Navaratri season, we gave a lecture called Kali equals Durga equals Chandi. So refer to that lecture where I make slightly more nuanced arguments and maybe point to more scripture to make this point that you shouldn't think of Kali as different from Durga. Happens all the time. Just watch the general chat in the Discord. Very quickly, you'll see that people have this understanding that Kali and Durga are somewhat separate. I have people wanting Durga mantras and they want Kali mantras. And then they're like, wait, I actually prefer a Kali mantra to a Durga mantra. I got a Durga mantra, but then I wanted a Kali mantra. Also, what about a Parvati mantra? And then what about a Ṣoḍaśī mantra? And it's like, I see where that's coming from. Let's correct that right now. Let's nip that in its bud. There are no different goddesses, not a pantheon of various different goddesses in a polytheistic system. It is a very rich and diverse culture approaching the same deity with different vantage points. And those vantage points are not even that different. Look at Durga. I mean, she's covered in blood. She's got weapons. Ugh, what? She's gentler than Kali? Hardly. Her dhyana mantras describe her as very fierce and exceedingly unpredictable, drunk even. Not this dharmic, good, Dan. I'm so happy. Me too. Not this dharmic avenger of the good and the just, but like a fierce goddess, a war goddess, drunk and full of fight, who must be worshipped with great care and great tact. Anyway, Kali is the same, whatnot. But now I want to come to another deity, which is maybe more esoteric, Jaggadhātri. Now, Jaggadhātri is a name that we often give to Durga, but in Bengal, there's a specific cult, as it were. And by cult, I don't mean pejoratively. There's a cult of worship of the goddess Jaggadhātri. It's particularly notable in Bengal. Now, Jaggadhātri is a bit different from Durga, a bit different from Kali, in that while Kali and Durga are both depicted as black or smoky colored, Jaggadhātri is almost always, especially in Bengal, depicted as red. Aruna, meaning red-skinned. Or here's a mantra for her, Kamini Dhyana. We have the mantra, what is it? Singaskandam samarudham rakta varnam chaturbhujam. She's red color, rakta varnam chaturbhujam. She's wearing red clothes, red sari typically. Her skin is red, and she's depicted as riding atop the shoulders of a lion, which is true of Lalita. Remember Shri Mata, Shri Maharagni, Shri Mat Singhasaneshwari. She is the one who is the great auspicious one, riding on the asana of the lion, Singha Asa, Singhan Asan. So Singhasaneshwari, Srimat Singhasaneshwari. So remember, when you think of the goddess, you think of her on her lion as the symbolization of her rajas. That's true of Kali, it's true of Durga, it's true of Lalita, and of course it's true of Jaggadhātri. Jagat means world, Dhatri means to hold. So Jaggadhātri means the one who holds the world. In the song Amar Matanghi, there's a line. It goes like this: Tumi Sandhya, Tumi Gayatri, Tumi Jaggadhātri Goma. There are other lines that say she is earth, Tumi Jalle, Tumi Sthale, Tumi Adyamule Goma. You are the root, the essence of everything. You are water, you are earth. And in this line, you are the Sandhya, the setting sun, or the twilight hour. You are Gayatri, which is the mantra that is chanted during the Sandhya. And not only are you Gayatri, the goddess of the Vedic period, you are Jaggadhātri. And that's important. It's a Bengali folk song to Tara. And the line that we're getting from this folk song is, Tumi, you are Jaggadhātri. The poet, the singer, has discerned for himself or themselves who this goddess Tara really is. So don't think Tara is Tara. Okay, be very careful with that. People always make this mistake. They think Tara is Tara and Kali is Kali. What nonsense. Tara and Kali? She's the one mother. Why then does Swamiji, in front of the image of Bhavatarini Kali, sing Amar Ma Tvam Hi Tara? All night long he's singing this Amar Ma Tvam Hi Tara. What, you think he has to go to Tarapit and stand in front of Ma Tara in Tarapit to sing that song? Because somehow being in front of Bhavatarini Kali in Dakshineshwar, that song's not going to work because she's not Tara? What nonsense. The one in front of him is none other than Tara, is none other than Lalita, Ṣoḍaśī. So in the what's that? Mahanirvana Tantra, a modern Tantra. Some argue its authenticity because it's so modern. There's a beautiful song. Twam hi Annapurna, you are the goddess of food. Twam hi Durga, you are Durga. You are Vak Devi, meaning you are Saraswati. And then Jaggadhātri, various other things. Ṣoḍaśī, Dhumavati, like that. So when you think of the Mahavidyas, we get very dogmatic because we think it must be Kali, Tara, Ṣoḍaśī, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamastaka, Dhumavati, Bagala, Matangi. No, nothing of the sort. Actually, the list changes. Durga is sometimes in there. Sometimes Ṣoḍaśī is dropped. Sometimes she's added. Sometimes Lakshmi is there. Jai Ma! Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Jaggadhātri Devi ki Jai. Thank you for the flowers, Ma. Hey, you ready to do some singing? I'm like starting to feel like singing. A good drummer has come. Kieran has come. So once a drummer comes, the words must stop. The song must begin. Why talk when you can sing? So we'll do some Mahishasura Mardini in just a bit. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. So we have this idea that like Annapurna, Vakdevi, Tara, don't sweat it. It's all the same. And therefore Swamiji can sing to Bhavatarani. Also, you know what else is my pet peeve? I hope you don't mind. These things are beginning to agitate me more these days. Not just the idea that Durga and Kali and Chandi are all different, but the idea that there's something called Dakshana Kali and Smashana Kali. This makes me wild. These days I can't stand it. Because you know what it sounds like? Censoring Kali. It's like saying that I will have Kali without Kali. It's like, no, no, then don't even. I mean, why make a pretense that you're worshipping Kali if you don't want Kali? If you want Kali, accept the Smashan. Expect transformative grace. Accept that life is inherently full of suffering and then embrace that suffering as a powerful tool for realizing transcendence within immanence. Like Kali is Kali, whether Dakshina or don't even worry about it. So therefore, the first point to make is that Kali, Durga, Tara, Ṣoḍaśī, whatever, I haven't gone into Ṣoḍaśī yet, but all of these, they're interchangeable. And therefore, in this folk song, to Tara, it says, Tumi Sandhya, Tumi Gayatri, Tumi Jaggadhātri. This is, I think, especially important in the Bengali context, where there is a popular worship of the goddess Jaggadhātri. Like there's a cult of worship for her, and she has a dhyana mantra where her skin is red, and she's more like Bhuvaneshwari, if you will. Joel G was pointing that out earlier. There's more of Bhuvaneshwari feeling where she's holding the world, she's nourishing the world. She has big breast, usually like Bhuvaneshwari style breast. A lot of similarities between the Bhuvaneshwari Dhyana mantra and the Jaggadhātri Dhyana mantra. Now, the reason this is important is because this is the kula-devī of Holy Mother's family. And every year, Holy Mother's family would go to great expense actually to host the Jaggadhātri puja. It was a big thing in their village. And this is a speculation, it's not a fact, we don't know for sure, but it's possible, that Holy Mother was initiated by the same family guru that Sri Ramakrishna was first initiated by in order for him to do Kali Puja. So Keraram Bhattacharya or something in that like kind of lineage. So Holy Mother, when she was initiated, the question is, what mantra did she get? It's very likely that she got a Jaggadhātri mantra. Not a Kali mantra, but again, that shouldn't bother you because Jaggadhātri is not different from Kali. So we say, oh, she worshipped Kali. Yes, she had a picture of Kali in her room. And by the way, that picture was on cigarette boxes, right? Like Holy Mother worshipped the poor person's Kali. That image that we all worship, that was literally made popularized. It was popularized because a cigarette company put that image, that lithograph on their boxes. So we're worshipping Kali as she appeared on the back of a cigarette box. Like almost like a back of a cereal box or something. People always think, oh, this is a very like, oh my God, a very like, refined image that some great artist made, bro. It was a cigarette company. We're worshiping a Marlboro man, if you will. So Holy Mother, of course, worshipped that Kali. Being a very lower income person herself, like of course that Kali was very popular in her community. The cigarette Kali, I call her. Um, Cancer Kali. But Jaggadhātri was probably her kula-devī. I mean, her family deity, definitely in her village, her family did the regular worship of Jaggadhātri, if not her ishta Devi. It's possible that Holy Mother's mantra was specifically a Jaggadhātri mantra that she got from a guru. And you know what else is crazy? Again, this is conjecture. Some scholars have made this point that she didn't receive a mantra from Ramakrishna. It would have been superfluous. Why would Sri Ramakrishna give her a mantra? She already got a tantric mantra. Think about it. Did Sri Ramakrishna need a Kali mantra from some great Shakta? I'm not saying Keraram Bhattacharya wasn't a great Shakta. It's just that how many of you remember his name? Where are biographies written about him? And that's not to take away from his greatness. It's to add to the greatness of the mantra. Our problem is that we always think about the person who gives the mantra and we want mantra from like a very high pedigree. We're like, oh, this mantra came from this very great guru, whose guru was even greater, whose guru was even much, much, much more great, and whose guru was none other than Vishnu Bhagavan himself. And that's true. Ultimately, all lineages can be traced back to none other than God. But like, does it really matter actually what the pedigree of the lineage is? We say no, because what matters is the mantra. The mantra that flows through the lineage, that's what matters. And we don't need to know who Keraram Bhattacharya is. Allegedly, this man ran away from the scene when Sri Ramakrishna got Diksha because Sri Ramakrishna started screaming. He just screamed so loudly that Keraram Bhattacharya got scared and allegedly got up and ran away or something. We don't know much about K. Bhattacharya. We don't even know very much about Bhairavi Brahmani, but we do know this. What mantra Sri Ramakrishna got from Keraram Bhattacharya, who might have been an obscure, just Bengali tantric pandit, with that mantra alone, he realized Kali. And this argues that any mantra will do, actually. But specifically the mantras that come through the Tantric lineage, who gives them to you doesn't matter actually that much. Actually, the fact that they are there and they've been given, I think the fact that they're given is important. Like, maybe not as important as people want it to be. If you can read it in a book, it's no problem also. If you get it from the internet, it's also no problem because there's inherent sanctity in the mantra itself. And that's why we think, I want a Kali mantra. Don't be a fool. If you got a Jaggadhātri mantra, or a Durga mantra, or a Ṣoḍaśī mantra, please don't make any mistake here. It is the same goddess that you're worshipping. Don't think I must get a Kali mantra now. It's different from a Ṣoḍaśī mantra. No. That's a very immature understanding. Here you can see with all the scriptural citation we've just offered, whether from the Chandi or from these Bengali folk songs, from the highest Sanskrit literature, Puranic literature, to like the most colloquial of folk songs, the same point is being made again and again and again. There's only one goddess, and Shakti mantra is Shakti mantra. So if your mantra has any kind of Shakti bija in it, Klim, Shrim, Aim, don't fuck around, okay? It's a Shakti mantra. Those are Shakta bijas. Those bijas are for the Divine Mother, and they appear within the Tantric transmission of Kaulism, especially Kaulism, if not the Tantric tradition as a whole. Okay, having said all of that, Jaggadhātri is a Bengali deity whose mantra might have been given to Holy Mother as part of her family guru. Sri Ramakrishna might not have felt the need to give her a new mantra since she already had that mantra. So then what does Sri Ramakrishna do? Who knows? Who knows what passes between them as guru and disciple? But it's very likely that maybe no mantra was given. And so I think, and this is another point I wanted to make about Holy Mother and about Sri Ramakrishna, we have put as a community maybe a little too much emphasis on mantra. I mean, it's good. It's the heart of Tantra, giving a mantra, chanting a mantra. The whole sadhana is accomplished through japa. And we talked about it in last year's talk, japat siddhi. The only thing Holy Mother really conveyed in terms of spiritual practice is to just do a lot of japa. In fact, japa is all you need. And she herself did puja, she herself performed homa, she herself did very complex sadhanas like the Panchatapa, where she sits surrounded by 4 fires all around her with the fire above her. She is no stranger to complex puja and sadhana and homa, but her instruction wasn't really about that. In fact, when she taught puja, she taught a very simple, stripped down puja. A lot of people who come to the Ramakrishna lineage get very frustrated because their mind's full of guile and complexity, which is not a bad thing, it's natural. They come to the Ramakrishna lineage and they want something full of guile and complexity. They want a puja krama, they want mantra krama, they want many different mantras, they want to worship all these different Mahavidyas, and they want to do the whole Sri Vidya krama starting from Ganesh, going through Matangi, Varahi, all that. You just have to remember one thing: the more force there is, the less form is required. The more form is there, sometimes the less force there is. And Holy Mother was all force, such that she didn't ever need to give form, and she didn't really feel the need to even encourage any form. She just told people to repeat sincerely the mantra that she gave them. Of course, she might give a Bagala mantra, she might give various mantras that suit the disposition of the devotee, no problem. There's obviously some room there for customization. Of course, a Kali mantra is going to work a bit better for me than, say, a Lakshmi mantra. But if I got a Lakshmi mantra, I still got a Shakti mantra. It's no different. If I just chant it with faith and sincerity, everything can be accomplished, especially given Holy Mother's role as the reconciliation of all the different deities. So I can just think of Holy Mother and chant my mantra, and I'm chanting to Kali, even if my mantra is to Lakshmi, for example. Now, coming to Holy Mother, she got a Jaggadhātri mantra, and yet, wasn't she Kali? Didn't she realize Kali? Didn't she have visions of Kali? And the point that's being made here is that by chanting the Jaggadhātri mantra, she did that. What mantra did she do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of malas for? Nobody knows. It could be mantras that she was awakening to give to her disciples. Sri Ramakrishna taught her a few mantras, no doubt. Sri Ramakrishna, some mantras were revealed to him, and he taught her the mantra, and he taught her how to initiate people based on what mantras go with what people and what deities. Like that all happened, no doubt. But as per her own sadhana, it's possible she did Jaggadhātri Japa. And it makes sense for her to do Jaggadhātri Japa because she did Jaggadhātri Puja. Typically, the puja we do goes with the mantra that we chant. So all of that was probably Holy Mother's personal life, personal sadhana, although that's only a conjecture, it's still something worth thinking about. The final point I want to make now before wrapping up is this. If Jaggadhātri is red in color, that makes her uncannily like another very famous deity, perhaps one of the most important deities in the entire Tantric tradition. And for reasons we don't need to get into now. This Aruna Vigraha, Taruna Vigraha, who is Lalita. Lalita is almost always ubiquitously depicted as red, while Kali is almost always depicted as Shyama, meaning either black or gray or black gray or black blue or midnight blue. And sometimes there's a specific color, midnight blue, that the Tara or some of the Nitya Kalis, they are depicted not as black, Shyama, but as blue. as Neela, as like a deep, dark midnight blue. So yeah, Kali can be either gray, black, storm cloud color, blue, midnight blue, but Lalita, almost always, indisputably, she is red. Because she's passion, she's Kamini. That's true of Jaggadhātri. And no surprise, let's look at Holy Mother's Dhyana mantra again. We should end the way we started. I showed you two Dhyana mantras. In the second, more esoteric Dhyana mantra, there is a clear Sri Vidya influence here. Dhyayet hridambuje devim tarunaruna vigraham varabhaya karam shantam smitot phula mukham bujam. Actually, a little before that, sneha mayim shivam shantam bhukti mukti pradainim sarvajiva trana kartrim saradam jnana dainim. So the tarunaruna vigraham, that immediately comes to mind, brings to mind the Lalita mantra. When you look at the Sri Vidya tradition, so many Dhyana mantras of Lalita, of Ṣoḍaśī, will play on this Tarunaruna Vigraham. That's true of many deities, but it's especially true of Ṣoḍaśī. So when you think of Jaggadhātri, think of her as Bhuvaneshwari, and then think of her as Ṣoḍaśī. You can see in Bengal, maybe Jaggadhātri. This is just my conjecture. I didn't grow up in Bengal. I'm not like that acquainted to the Bengali folk practice of worshipping Jaggadhātri, except in the capacity of being in this lineage. But my feeling is that Jaggadhātri plays this sort of Kilaka role, or sort of, the name Jaggadhātri plays a sort of bridging role, if you will, between what we might call Bhuvaneshwari and what you might call Ṣoḍaśī. But she specifically links the Bengali tradition, I think, to the Sri Vidya of the South. Sri Vidya is all over India. It's particularly big in Kashmir, Vamakeshwari, Mata Tantra, and whatnot. But how does Sri Ramakrishna learn it? This is something that I would love to hear some scholars talk about, because it's often a missed part of his history. We know he learned Tantra, but the thing is, not many people know a lot about Tantra to know that Sri Vidya is a very specific form of Tantra. Did he learn it from Bhairavi Brahmani? Perhaps. Perhaps Bhairavi, in teaching him the 64 agamas, taught him the Kaula Marga, taught him all the Amnayas, Uttaramnaya, Sarvamnaya, like maybe. Did he learn it from Keranam Bhattacharya? Maybe. Did he learn it from Ram Kumar, his elder brother, from whom he learned many tantric sadhanas? Perhaps. It's not clear how he learnt Ṣoḍaśī Puja. So then what does it mean for Sri Ramakrishna to worship Holy Mother as Ṣoḍaśī? You'll see that when Holy Mother is called Tarunaruna Vigraham, we're relating her not only to Jaggadhātri, which makes sense, that might have been her ishta and her kula-devī, but we're also relating her to Lalita, to Ṣoḍaśī. And when Sri Ramakrishna worships her as Ṣoḍaśī, that point is, I think, reified. So that's my evidence for the claim, based on her Dhyana mantra, and based on her kula-devī and her ishta Devi, perhaps, and based on Sri Ramakrishna's way of worshipping her, that actually when we're talking about Kali in our lineage, we're talking about Lalita. And when we're talking about Holy Mother, we're talking about Lalita. She's understood to be Lalita. That's the point I'm hopefully trying to make. This should help clarify her mantra. When we say Sarva Deva Devi Swarupinye Shri Sarada Devye Namaha, we often add to it we add what is Mantra Dishatar Devataye Shri Jaggadhātri Durgaye Namaha. That's her full mantra. Mantra Dishatar Devataye means that Devata, that goddess who establishes the mantra. This idea you all know about, because you know that in a lineage, the mantra that passes through that lineage is called the Guru Shakti. She is the Guru Shakti. So when you're chanting your mantra, whatever your bijas are, know that the power is Holy Mother. She is that mantra personified, and it's her power that flows through to us in the form of the mantra. That's one idea. But also, she's the one who established the mantra. She's the seer of the mantra. She's the Rishika, because Sri Ramakrishna reveals the mantras to her, and then she is the one who gives the mantra to her disciples to then initiate. Either she initiates herself, or she tells her disciples to initiate, and she gives them the mantra to initiate. And so therefore, she is the not only establisher of the mantra, she is the Rishika, the one who saw the mantra, to whom the mantra was revealed. And the final point here is she is Mantra Dishatar Devataye Shri Jaggadhātri Durgaye Namaha. Durga, of course, we all know, but what kind of Durga? Jaggadhātri Durga. She is that Durga with the red skin, who is the Bengali, I'm going to argue, Bhuvaneshwari or Lalitā Mahātripurasundarī. Hopefully that will clarify why we say Mantradishatar, and also why we say Shri Jaggadhātri Durga. So that's so much for now. I just wanted to point to a few more esoteric tantric ideas in the worship of Holy Mother. Why do we use these bijas? Why do we use a dhyana that describes her as red-skinned? Why is she the giver of bhukti as well as mukti, when in her life she seemed to be almost entirely for moksha and mukti and renunciation? Why is she depicted as seated to the left of Shiva? What Bhagastam? Why is she in the yoni? Why are we talking about a yoni? Holy Mother is the mother. We can't think of her in that way. And yet her dhyana mantra says Vama. the Vama meaning, of course, woman, not necessarily Vamachara, but Vama as in woman, in the way I hope you will understand the word Vamachara, as in the worship of mother. And then Bhaga means yoni, stha. She is established in the yoni. And arguably, when Sri Ramakrishna worships her as Ṣoḍaśī, it's a yoni puja. I mean, the Sri Chakra is the word. I mean, how can anybody look at a triangle, put red stuff and white stuff on the triangle, pour milk on the triangle, and then not to some extent understand that this is a worship of sexuality, but divinized? Sexuality in its sara, in its essential form, as pure life, as pure power. And that's why when you come to Holy Mother, her attitude is not one of purity and kamini kanchan is bad kind of thing. It's like, dude, you're a Muslim criminal that just got out of jail who stole some pumpkins on the way to see me. Come. I am the mother of the wicked as well as the virtuous. That only Holy Mother can do. Shiva can't do that. Shiva's all purity. Ramakrishna can't do that. Don't even think about it. He would never have been able to touch Hamza, let alone look at him. Don't come to God. Forget God. God is not worth worshipping. Worship God's power. It's God's power that we call grace. This is the Shakta argument. If you want Shiva, if you are a Shaiva, don't you dare try to worship Shiva. What can you know of Shiva? You are Shiva, but Shiva is formless and impersonal. What will you accomplish meditating on the formless and the impersonal? You'll become no better than a rock. In fact, if you're very lucky, you'll become Milarepa. But most of us become no better than lethargic rocks, worshipping the formless and impersonal. Better to worship Shakti. See, don't think you can be Milarepa so easily. He had Marpa. Right? And we don't have a marpa around us. So when we go to the cave and sit and meditate on nothing, really what we meditate upon is the tuna melt sandwich we had for lunch. It's impossible to meditate on nothing. You can't do it unless you can. Very rarely can a person do it. So instead, you should meditate on something. Why not the thing of all things, the sum in the something? The sum of all things. That's something. The something, not the SOME thing, but the SUM thing. And the something, which is in all things, is Sarada, the giver of essence. So what is it to worship Sri Ramakrishna? Whose lineage are we in? Don't say Sri Ramakrishna. He is but a pillowcase, empty, totally empty, through and through. He himself said so on the boat with Keshav. He said, this is but a pillowcase. Don't forget that we are in a Shakta lineage. There are no men here. Vivekananda is empty. He is but a microphone that a woman holds to make her voice heard. Sri Ramakrishna is empty. He is nothing but a devotee. He doesn't come here to be worshipped. He teaches us how to worship. Who are we worshipping? Not the body, but the one, he says, who lives in him. He says there are two people here, a devotee and the goddess. My claim here is that Sri Ramakrishna is not so much an ishta as he is an ishta, how do I put it? Like modality. He teaches us how to worship God. But the God that we worship is the essence of Sri Ramakrishna, which Swami Shankarananda in my citation earlier says is his heart. So what shall we do then, friends, today on Holy Mother's Jayanti? But this, recognize that we are not in the lineage of Sri Ramakrishna. There never was a Sri Ramakrishna. Swamiji said, I'm certain of it. This Sri Ramakrishna was dredged up by the Divine Mother for her own purposes. This is avatarahood. There's no Jesus. There's no Ramakrishna. The docetic Jesus idea. It's only Holy Mother. And the whole thing is puppeteered by her. That's why we don't hear very much about her, because she's behind the scenes, moving around all these male figures in a male world. Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Brahmananda. But look at how they all treated her. She was the Shakti behind all of it. And therefore, in our puja, this is of course a puja class, when we come to the padati, we see that all of these ideas are maintained. We worship her more than anyone else. And when we worship her, we use Sri Chakra mantras, Sri Chakra dhyanams. If we do a puja tonight, you'll see mostly her worship is in a kind of Sri Chakra context. I was going to do the full one, but I thought, let's just chill. You have your jury tomorrow, and I think maybe instead of a 7-hour thing, we can do a 2-hour thing. And but like the Sri Chakra puja, that's usually Holy Mother, she's worshipped as Sri Chakra because that's how Ramakrishna did it. So to put all these ideas together in closing, we have Kali and Durga. This is a no-brainer for you. Kali, Durga, Chandika equals Ambika. That's like 101. That's like 2 years ago, Shaktism. That's no problem. You know that. But then now we have Jaggadhātri, a slightly more esoteric idea. Also regional. It's kind of unique to Bengal. And hopefully we can see how Jaggadhātri links us to Bhuvaneshwari/Ṣoḍaśī and why then it would make sense for Sri Ramakrishna to worship Holy Mother as Ṣoḍaśī. So thinking of her as Lalita is very important, because then we understand why we are in the Dakshinamnaya, why Dakshina Kali is called Dakshina Kali. Not because she's right-hand path or safe or anything, but because she's within this Lalita or Sri Vidya transmissions. Kali is understood in the southward-facing Lord Shiva, which these are all ideas I'll talk about on Sunday at the Hollywood Temple. Just in my little spiel, I'll talk a little bit about Ṣoḍaśī and Dakshinambika and whatnot. So I'll stop here for now and maybe open for just a few questions before we plunge into some song, maybe. I don't know. Okay. So anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about Holy Mother and about her special day? May this be an offering at her lotus feet. She who is most mysterious, she who is Kali, Durga, Tarini, who is Annapurna, who is Devi, who is Jaggadhātri, and above all, she who is Ṣoḍaśī. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Saradarpanam Astu. Jai Ma Sarada. Okay, what do we got? We got the lecture called the Tantra of Holy Mother from 2023. Then in 2024, we have the lectures Who is Holy Mother and Holy Mother as Tāntrik Guru or something like that. Then now we have this lecture on Holy Mother as Jaggadhātri and Ṣoḍaśī. So just a few different ways of thinking about she who can never be thought about. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns? Let's see.